The wonderful adventures of the Warhammer elf. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176, Winning Over the Gentry. Marina slowly opened her confused eyes, her beautiful eyes staring at Rohan's hand on her shoulder. She couldn't believe what she heard. "I've already closed my eyes, and you told me to be sworn brothers?" Looking at Marina with a surprised face, Rohan didn't think there was anything wrong with his proposal, because this proposal could indeed facilitate both of them. If you want to go to Nagaran by sea, you must cross a strait full of sea dragons and various dangerous creatures. Except for the large black ark, no ship can cross the strait. And Rohan will definitely have more and more plundering fleets composed of warships in the future, and it is impossible for every one of them to be a large black ark. What's more, he is not sure whether that bastard American Englisher really raised the price of the rebirth pill behind his back, so no matter what the consideration is, he has to change his Spokesperson. Therefore, Rohan must find a place where he can dump the spoils, such as Halkadora. Thinking of having a stable place to sell spoils in the future, Rohan couldn't help but pat Marina excitedly and said, "As long as we join forces, we can become the two richest families in the entire Nagaras region. What do you think, dear Ms. Marina?" Rohan, who was in high spirits at the moment, didn't notice that Marina in his arms was looking at him with a dark face. "I'm very happy that you are willing to hug me and call me dear, but I don't like it if you don't do it." But this can't be blamed entirely on Rohan. After all, he has been busy with the expedition to another world in the Blessing recently, so he subconsciously ignored the openness of the Dark Elves in this regard. What's more, compared to the physical union with Marina, Rohan hopes to establish a covenant that can bring substantial benefits. This is what he really needs. Of course, more importantly, the armor of the Lord of Terror on Marina's body is full of spikes, which pricks her hands. Seeing that Rohan was really not interested in her body, Marina could only roll her eyes and raise the sword in her hand to chop at Rohan again. Seeing this, when Rohan was about to block with his iron rod, he suddenly heard Marina shout angrily, "As long as you let me chop you once, I will agree to your alliance." "That's what you said." Hearing this, a dazzling blue light immediately rose from Rohan's body. He threw the iron rod aside and prepared to forcibly take Marina's chop. The powerful physical resistance and the bonus of Living Saint had already made Rohan's body difficult for ordinary swords to get close to him. In addition, the 120 armor, after being blessed, was enough for him to block this attack with his flesh. Marina was obviously just talking in anger. Seeing that Rohan dared to show his head to let her chop, she was so scared that she quickly reduced the strength of her hand and gently slashed towards Rohan's neck. Ding! A sound like iron hammering came from Rohan's neck. Marina quickly retracted the rapier in her hand. Looking at the gap where the tip had already curled, she couldn't help but twitching her eyes. Her rapier was infused with her sister's black magic. As long as she regularly injected magic into it, it would never be bent. Looking at the blue light constantly emanating from Rohan, Marina threw away the enchanted rapier worth hundreds of gold in her hand and asked with an unhappy face, "What kind of move is this? How can it block my enchantment magic? If you want to learn, I'll teach you." Looking down at the blue light emitting from his body, Rohan smiled and touched the Living Saint mode, took off the silver cross hanging around his neck, and gave it to Marina, saying like a charlatan, "Hopeful girl, are you interested in learning about the beliefs of the Lady of the Mist? As long as you are devout enough, you can also gain such powerful power." He didn't care whether Marina was a believer of Cain. After all, the Lady of the Mist, who had greatly increased her strength, was no longer afraid of Cain, and it was no big deal, even if she robbed a few believers. If he could really fool a Lord of Fear like Marina and influence her to serve the Lady of the Mist, then Rohan would have done a great job. Looking at the silver cross necklace handed over by Rohan, Marina did not refuse, but put it on her neck and then sighed, "Cain, if the Lord of Murder knows about your behavior, he may send down an oracle to crush you into dust. Don't worry, I just want you to understand other sects, not to ask you to turn to Lady of the Mist immediately." Rohan would not believe that Cain would find him for such a thing. After all, he himself can be regarded as half a Cain believer. You know, even Rohan now, after every war in the Warhammer world, will routinely hold the Cain festival. The souls of the beastmen who died under the dragon flame some time ago have all been sacrificed by him according to the standard Cain festival, and there will be no waste at all. And Cain does not seem to have the intention of punishing him, which also makes Rohan dare to recruit other Cain believers. After all, Cain pursues the beauty of war, just like the illegitimate child of Khorne and Slaanesh. As long as they can bring him the art of war and the beauty of killing, even the believers of other elven gods will be blessed by Cain. Just in this respect, it is much better than a certain old K who can't afford to play and flip the table himself. Seeing the indifference on Rohan's face, Marina didn't know what to say. After all, this was the first gift Rohan gave her, and she would definitely keep it well. Looking at Rohan's handsome face, Marina was slightly fascinated, and then hugged his shoulders and said coquettishly, "Can you take me to ride your dragon? I also want to try the feeling of flying." In a society like the Dark Elves that symbolizes free love, a young, handsome, and powerful Lord of Fear like Rohan is really too attractive. Looking at Marina who was hugging his shoulders, Rohan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then he withdrew his arms from her arms and refused. "I'm afraid not. Luobo has never been ridden by anyone else, not to mention that even I haven't taken my fiancé to ride a flying dragon, so how could I take you specially? What are you afraid of? Anyway, your human fiancé is not here. Besides, don't I look good?" Upon hearing that Rohan actually mentioned his fiancé in front of her, Marina could only secretly curse Rohan for his lack of understanding of romance, while taking off the mask to reveal her charming face. She didn't believe it. Could her charm really be inferior to that of a short-lived mage? However, Rohan didn't seem to focus on his face. Instead, he frowned and looked into the distance. Did he dislike that he was too ugly? Marina's eyebrows were raised, but she reacted quickly the next moment, picked up the rapier on the ground and asked, "Are you coming?" "Yes, I'm coming." Chapter 177, Making Up a Pretext. Halkadora, outside the city. Woohoo! A series of low and hoarse horn sounds were slowly blown. The Durachi soldiers suppressed their disgust for the horn sounds and aimed their weapons at the brown beast sea all over the mountains below. Countless battle groups composed of inferior horn cannon fodder and horn warriors were constantly making unpleasant beast roars, communicating with each other in blasphemous black language. They couldn't wait to take over the city, tear those tender elves into pieces, and then feast on their internal organs. On the city wall, several female sorcerers were holding their staffs and waiting solemnly. The dark purple magic wind slowly surrounded them. Obviously, each of them was a master of death magic. Higgs stood on the city wall in heavy armor, and it seemed that he didn't take the hundreds of thousands of beastmen outside the city seriously at all. This is certainly not because he underestimated the enemy, but because the family reinforcement from Nagaland have arrived. Several wild Tyrannosaurus captured from the tropical rainforest of Lystria, and a high-level female sorceress of the fire department riding a manticore, are enough to sweep the entire battlefield. Under the training of the family's animal trainer, the Tyrannosaurus can find those huge minotaurs on the battlefield, and then tear them into pieces with its sharp teeth and claws. And this high-level female sorceress is even more amazing. It is said that this is a female sorceress specially invited from Goran by his family at a high price. It is said that she was once an apprentice of Morathi. In addition to being able to release low-level magic such as Fireball and Ruin Flame Sword, she can even use various legendary high-level spells. Even Higgs, who always thinks highly of himself, dared not neglect such a strong man. Looking at the beautiful figure standing by the wall, he bowed humbly and asked, "Ms. Mekisha, we will need to rely on your magic in the next battle. If you need anything, you can ask for it. We will try our best to meet your needs. No, you just need to ensure that your people do not leave their posts without permission. Now you can leave." The purple-haired female sorceress named Mekisha looked at the humble Higgs with some disdain, and then waved her hand impatiently to signal her to leave, treating her completely as a servant. Hearing the other party's contemptuous tone, Higgs' face covered by her hair was slightly distorted, but when he raised his head, He showed a self-proclaimed brilliant smile and said, "Please rest assured, I will go and tell them now. Goodbye." Then he left the city wall without looking back, and it seemed that he was really going to inform the soldiers. Looking at Higgs's back, Mekisha's mouth curled up a wicked sneer, and then turned his head to continue observing the beastmen outside the city. She didn't care whether Higgs would really inform those soldiers. After all, the dead were not her family members, and they deserved to be burned to death. Through the far-sighted spell, she had noticed several screaming shamans mixed in with the beastmen. They were her biggest enemies. It was not difficult to see from their mutated and twisted limbs that they were all powerful mages blessed by chaos, and their strength should not be underestimated. As more and more beastmen began to gather outside the city, even Mekisha, a high-level mage, couldn't help but sigh. It's really troublesome. If it weren't for studying that damn rebirth pill, I wouldn't run to such a remote place. As time has passed for several years, Rohan's amazing rebirth pill has already caused an uproar in the entire Nagaroth region. Countless dreadlords and sorceresses have tried to analyze this magical potion, trying to find out the secret of life contained in it and break Rohan's monopoly. However, the alchemy method from the Elder Scrolls world belongs to another faction. Even if these Tarachi racked their brains, they could not study the secret. After all, how could these noble alchemists think that such a pill with amazing efficacy would actually use the most common salt? And she, Mekisha, is also an excellent alchemist, so she is naturally curious about this pill that can restore vitality and even eliminate curses. However, even if she racked her brains to study, she only analyzed the rare dragon blood from it, and nothing else. Even if she wanted to continue her research, the expensive dragon blood made her, who lived in seclusion in Gorant for many years, a little difficult to afford, so she had to leave the Black Tower and take private jobs. Dirty beastman, I really hope to burn you to ashes now. Dazzling orange-yellow fireballs slowly floated up from her side, immediately scaring the surrounding guards back one after another. Although there were not many fire phoenixes in the cold Nagaroth region, red streams of light began to float around Mekisha. The hot air and bright flames all praised the powerful magic of this sorceress. Even the screaming shamans in the distance seemed to have noticed the flames on the city wall. Yellow light spots also began to gather from them, ready to cast spells. Moo. The brown-yellow spears slowly gathered above their heads, accompanied by the shouts of the surrounding beastmen, and gradually condensed into a giant spear several meters long. That was the beast-type offensive spell, Amber Spear. At the same time, pure black magic crows began to fly out of the sky, constantly making strange cries above the beastmen, spreading clouds of fear. However, the beastmen did not seem to be frightened by this horrific scene. Instead, they excitedly cried out, and their eyes were full of blood as they looked at the city wall. They knew that, as long as these noble shamans began to cast magic, it meant that the horn of attack was about to be blown. As for battering rams and shields, ungugated order didn't need siege equipment as vulnerable as humans. Minotaur and giants were enough to break through the fragile walls of pointy ears. Hoo 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 moo. As expected, as the terrifying roars of amber spears streaked across the sky, all the beastmen roared and ran towards the walls of Halkadra. The giants also roared and charged forward, completely ignoring the Reaper crossbows that were constantly firing at them in the sky, preparing to rush to the city gate to attack. Ding 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 ding. Enemy attack. Beastmen attack. Tens of thousands of well-trained Nagaran soldiers immediately came to their respective posts and aimed all kinds of weapons in their hands at the beastmen outside the city. It was impossible for anyone to climb the nearly 100-meter high wall, so except for some fierce spearmen used to guard against the beastmen manticores, all were replaced by archers. The war began. Chapter 178 Waiting. Don't we need to help? Compared to the fierce battle on Halkadra's side, Rohan and Marina, who were hiding in the distance with binoculars, were much more relaxed. At this time, the two were sitting on the rocks in the mountain stream, holding small tomatoes and cucumbers that were obviously from the Fire Dragon world. That's right, Rohan hid Marina and his troops in the Fire Dragon world and summoned them at any time when needed. Marina looked at the red tomato in her hand with some surprise. The sweet and sour flesh immediately made her fall in love with this fruit, so she asked curiously, "There is no fruit growing manna in the whole Nagaroth?" Are these fruits also fruits from another world? As long as I can conquer a world by force, the resources of the entire continent can be allocated by me, and all goods must pass through my hands. Guess how much money I can make? Introducing his great achievements in the other world, even Rohan couldn't help but feel a little complacent, and then introduced with a serious face. Think about it, Halkazula is a trade transit station in the Nagaland area. There are tens of thousands of caravans coming and going every month. As long as we can cooperate and sell the goods from this other world, won't we make a lot of money? Hearing this, Marina couldn't help but focus on the tomato in her hand, lowered her head, and began to fall into thought. Nagaras has a large amount of magical farmland and slaves, so there is indeed no shortage of food. However, due to the cold weather and chaos corruption, there was no way to grow fruit in the entire Nagaroth region, and the only choice was to plunder from human or Bretonnian plantations. Moreover, after Rohan's introduction, Marina had a general understanding of the otherworldly goods that Rohan had, which could even change the market in the entire Nagaroth region. After eating the tomatoes in her hand, Marina turned her attention to Halkadora, who was rising black smoke in the distance, and smiled slightly. This deal is indeed worth it. Let's talk about it after Halkadora is safe. If the fortress falls this time, I'm afraid that not only will we lose our money, but we may not even be able to save our lives. Don't worry, for the sake of his own life, Higgs will definitely do his best to help us defend the city. Halkadora Moore's calm. Calm the soldier's fear of death. Eternal flower. Enhance endurance. Death Knight incarnation. Several female sorcerers of the death department kept waving their staffs and casting various buff spells on the soldiers who were fighting. I don't know if it's because the invasion of chaos is becoming more frequent, or for other reasons. The wind of magic in the air is becoming stronger. The magic that used to take a lot of time to store energy can now be easily released, which also allows the sorcerers to use magic unscrupulously. Moo. The screaming shamans behind the beastmen were not to be outdone, and they kept roaring obscure black language, making the beastmen and minotaurs who were attacking the city gate even more violent. Although compared with the magic of the elves, the screaming shaman's use of the wind of magic was poor, but it always caused the greatest damage. Moo. Suddenly, a charging bighorn beast was hit by the screaming shaman's magic, and fell to the ground with yellow light all over its body, wailing. After a while, the bighorn beast collapsed to the ground, and did not move, and even the big foot on its head was broken in half, and it seemed to have lost its life. The surrounding inferior horned beasts were scared and hid away. They did not think that this was a magic mistake made by the great shaman, but it was definitely something dangerous. After a long time, the big horned beast struggled to get up from the ground. Its body constantly twisted, and its body became bigger and bigger. Seeing this, Mekasha, who was watching the show on the city wall, immediately stood up, picked up the staff in surprise and said, "Cunning transfiguration? It seems that these lowly shamans of the beastmen are still quite good." It is said that a long time ago, there was a master of transfiguration named Cunning, who could transform his body into various giant beasts, even a fire dragon. However, one time, when he transformed himself into a manticore, he made a mistake, which made him unable to change back to human form, and could only remain in the state of a manticore. In the end, he lost all his independent consciousness, and turned into a real manticore. For an individual wizard, this kind of transfiguration is undoubtedly very dangerous. After all, the caster cannot guarantee that the person being cast can 100% return to his original form. However, for wizards on the battlefield, especially for aces like the beastmen who do not care about life, exchanging the life of a horned beast for a manticore is simply too profitable. Can this thing turn into a dragon? Looking at the squirming bighorn beast, Mekasha raised her staff with some curiosity and instantly threw out several small fireballs in the direction of the bighorn beast. The reason why she came to this place was because Goran's dragon blood was too expensive, and she needed to make money to buy blood for experiments. If this transformation can directly turn into a dragon for her to experiment, then can she get dragon blood from the dragon continuously? It must be said that this idea is indeed somewhat similar to Rohan's. After all, there is still a seriously injured fire dragon imprisoned in the Black Ark, and Rohan is constantly drawing blood from it like a medicine jar. As the fireballs fell on the big horn beast, the other party's originally twisted body quickly swelled and gradually grew wings and stopped. Rohan, who was watching the battle from a distance, saw all this through a telescope and couldn't help but pat his thigh and said with regret, "TSK, TSK, TSK, what a pity, it's just an ordinary manticore. It seems that this shaman's luck is too bad, right? A manticore is already strong enough. After all, it is also transformed from a big horn beast. You can't expect to turn a bad horn beast into a fire dragon." Marina continued to take out the fruit from the fruit plate and eat it. She was not interested in the city, where the fierce battle was going on. She just wanted Higgs to die quickly. Rohan continued to focus on the battlefield. After all, he had to prevent these beastmen from really breaking through the city gate. When Higgs chose to withdraw, he would have an excuse to impeach them. The manticore that had just been transformed had also regained consciousness. It kept turning around in the sky like a headless fly and could only avoid the crossbow arrows under the guidance of the shaman. Countless beastmen moved various ladders to the low part of the city wall like ants, preparing to force a breakthrough in the city's defense. Boom, 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 the giants kept swinging their sticks, banging the solid iron door. It was obvious that they couldn't hold on for much longer. Seeing this, Rohan slapped Marina's thigh and shouted excitedly, "It's time, get ready." Chapter 179, War Smoke Rising. Fire Dragon World. 100 silver dragon knights were already ready, holding dragon lances and sitting on the dragon saddles, patiently waiting for the portal to appear. Rohan was also making final preparations, placing bundles of ebony javelins near the dragon saddle, and then set his sights on Marina below. Seeing the other party holding the ordinary rapier with only low-level enchantments, Rohan took the top-grade silver sword from his waist and threw it over, while shouting, "Take it, this sword is for you to use, don't lose it." Looking at the silver sword thrown to her, Marina hurriedly took it and curiously unsheathed the silver sword, swished due to the magic nourishment of Rohan for 2 years. This silver sword, forged from silver and steel from another world, is now covered with blue patterns, shining with sacred light under the sun. Marina immediately fell in love with the sword, and then she placed the rapier that her sister had enchanted on the ground and wore the silver sword beside her and asked expectantly, "Good sword, is this a gift for me before the battle? You can have it if you want it, as long as you can survive the next battle, it will be yours." Looking at the conqueror that he had previously robbed, borrowed from an older elf made in the system space, Rohan didn't mind giving the sword away. After all, this silver sword was just a common weapon from the wizard sister. Although it had a bonus against big attacks, the bonus on the battlefield was not as good as the conqueror that could break armor. Looking at Marina, who was like a treasure, Rohan couldn't help but roll his eyes, then summoned a portal and shouted to the silver dragon knights around him, "The target is the large minotaur and giant at the gate of Alcadora. Get rid of the big guys first." Yes. Under the envious gaze of his former Teutonic Knight colleagues, the Silver Dragon Knights entered the portal one after another and flew towards Halkadora. The Teutonic Knights began to check the equipment of Marina's elven warriors and then supervise the Durachi soldiers to enter the portal. As Rohan's world of behemoths specifically used to breed ash dragons, he didn't want to leave any messy people in this world. In order to prevent these fellows of more than deep and shallow from making trouble in his territory, Rohan specially transferred a 2,000-man pen vassal army to prevent possible unrest. Fortunately, nothing happened in a few days. Faced with a human army several times larger than his own and hundreds of fire dragons taking turns to monitor, even the once arrogant Durachi did not dare to make trouble at will. After confirming that all the elves, including Marina, had left, Rohan walked into the portal with confidence, and at the same time, he did not forget to order, "Remember to check after I leave, and burn all the messy things left by my people, such as shrines and sacrificial supplies." Understood. Warhammer World, Halkadora, hold on. You damn idiots, all of you, push forward. On the wall, Higgs kept waving the halberd in his hand, killing several inferior horned beasts in front of him, and at the same time, he did not forget to roar at the retreating soldiers. There was no way. The main force of the family basically followed the Witch King to participate in the war. Although Higgs said that there were tens of thousands of Durachi troops, they were all some dark swordsmen and fearful spearmen. When facing inferior horned beasts and horned beast battle groups, these temporarily recruited militias can still fight bravely, and each person can deal with at least 10 horned beasts. But when those bion beasts holding heavy axes gradually climbed up the city wall, the situation gradually changed, because they were equipped with the best heavy armor and iron battle axes of the beastmen. Even the rapiers of the dark swordsmen could not cut through their armor, and the sharp spears of the fierce spearmen were also useless. On the contrary, the bion beasts could use their big horns to push away their shield walls. Although the big axes in their hands were not sharp, they could break their bones under the action of huge force. What's more, although the highest point of this magic wall that can resist chaos reached nearly 100 meters, the lowest point was only less than 20 meters, and it was completely possible to climb up with ladders. More and more inferior horned beasts began to climb over the city wall from the weak points. Coupled with the magic bonus of the screaming shamans, the beastmen with scholar eyes immediately caused considerable casualties to Higgs's troops. Shoot at the place where the ladders are set up. Seeing more and more beastmen climbing up the city wall, Higgs left the battlefield in anger and grabbed a crossbow captain who was shooting below and ordered. The captain glanced at the friendly troops within the range, and after a 0.1 second of sadness flashed through his mind, he shouted, "Everyone turn, aim, and shoot." After receiving the order, the black sharp crossbowmen turned the direction of the crossbows and aimed at the big horned beasts without shields and the friendly troops with their backs to them. Bang, 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 arrows rained down like rain, and the crossbowmen pulled the trigger without hesitation, not only because of their confidence in their shooting skills, but also because they didn't care about the lives of their comrades. What's there to be nervous about? It's not you who will die for a moment. Dozens of big horned beasts' heads were all pierced with crossbow arrows. Although the horns on their heads took some damage to them, that was all. Moo. With a continuous scream, these beastmen with a physique of more than 2 meters fell off the city wall and turned into a pool of meat paste. Several beastmen tried to use their big horns to attack the elves' shield wall before they died, but they were also blocked by the fierce spearmen who reacted. After a brief confrontation, only 2 unlucky dark swordsmen were shot in the back and struggled to fall down the city wall with the beastmen. Higgs nodded with satisfaction at this style of fighting that hurt the enemy by 1,000 and hurt himself by 200, and said, "But keep shooting and be sure to stop the beastman's attack." Then he looked at a jumping flaming skull under the city wall with a trace of envy and jealousy in his eyes. Damn, he also wanted to learn magic. Wow, skulls as wide as tens of meters kept shuttling on the battlefield, and thousands of inferior horned beasts without armor were screaming and burned into stakes, exuding a strong meaty aroma. Even the big horned beasts and minotaurs did not dare to face such a terrifying flame, and fled in the opposite direction of the flame, trying to stay away from the range of the flame. However, the fire skull kept opening its big mouth like a living thing, chasing the minotaurs who tried to attack the city wall and preventing them from approaching the city gate. At the top of the city wall, Mekasa was twisting her sparking white jade hands, controlling the fire skeletons to devour the beastmen of all sizes below. The fire type area spell, the fire skull, was as flexible as her own wrist under her control. Chapter 180, Fighting. Flame Skull, as a high-level magic of the flame system, is not something that ordinary flame mages can cast. This magic not only requires the caster to have precise control over magic, but also requires the caster to be able to mobilize a large amount of magic wind in the air for his own use. The surrounding death sorceresses looked at Mekasa with admiration, obviously impressed by her superb skills. They had seen other flame sorceresses release Flame Skull, but they had never seen such a long-lasting magic as Mekasa. Mekasa looked relaxed, and the magic wind surrounding her was as well behaved as her own children, which could continuously help her control the Flame Skull below. As the most talented flame sorceresses in the entire Gorand, her mastery of magic wind can be said to be perfect, which is not comparable to those wild screaming shamans. In just a few minutes, nearly 10,000 beastmen turned into ashes and fell to the ground, and Mekasa, standing on the city wall, was like a god at this moment. Moo. Unfortunately, the flame skull could not last long. Mekisha slowly put down the staff in her hand and frowned at her hands that were shaking with fatigue. Looking at the gradually dissipating magic wind around her, Mekisha took out a precious rebirth pill and ate it, then murmured, "What's going on? I don't feel tired at all. Could it be the shadow system? It is impossible for an ordinary screaming shaman to drain her physical strength without knowing it. I'm afraid there is at least one shaman blessed by chaos hiding among these beastmen. Rest. I'll leave it to you next." Thinking that a shadow screaming shaman hiding in the dark has already set his eyes on her, Mekisha said hello to the sorceresses and decisively walked down the wall. Although Higgs's family paid her a lot of commission, she would not really risk her life to win this battle. While after losing Mekisha's magic infusion, the flaming skull that was raging in the beast battle group immediately disappeared, leaving only ashes on the ground as proof that it had been there. The Minotaurs also noticed that the fireball that was blocking the door had disappeared, so they howled and rushed to the city gate. Higgs, who was fighting on the city wall, immediately noticed the abnormality under the city, and a trace of anxiety flashed in his eyes. He didn't know why Mekisha suddenly stopped casting spells, but he knew that he must not let the Minotaurs get close to the city gate. After all, this door had only been repaired for a few days and could not withstand heavy blows. Once the city gate was opened, hundreds of thousands of beastmen rushed into the city, and just thinking about it gave him a headache. When he thought that he had not yet captured Halkadora and had to spend so much energy on this city, Higgs couldn't help but have a headache. Damn it, foreign sorceresses are really unreliable. Looking at a purple light ball slowly rising at the city gate, Higgs's mouth curled up a glimmer of hope. Sure enough, his own sorceresses were more reliable. Before the Minotaurs who tried to charge could get close to the city gate, they were suddenly covered by the purple light and immediately wailed in pain and struggled. All the beastmen who tried to get close to the city gate began to struggle. The dazzling crystal slowly covered them, and soon their entire bodies turned into dazzling crystal statues. The rest of the Minotaurs were frightened and hurriedly fled from the city gate. However, the range of this purple sun was too large, and more than a dozen Minotaurs were instantly turned into crystal statues. This is exactly the range type spell of the death system, Zeral's purple evil sun. As the most powerful range type high level spell of the death system, several female sorcerers can only raise their staffs and chant spells together to barely cast this evil sun. However, even so, the surrounding magic winds were constantly being drawn away by them, and before long, this evil sun could no longer be maintained. Damn. If Lord Morathi was here, she would be able to easily create an evil sun that covers the entire battlefield, right? A young female sorcerer couldn't help but sigh, and immediately gained the approval of her comrades around her. As the world's top death mage, Morathi's strength should not be underestimated. With just a wave of her hand, she could turn tens of thousands of beastmen into ashes. Although the news of Morathi's defeat came from the south, the sorceresses of Gorand were still willing to succumb to Morathi's powerful magic attainments. But it was obvious that Morathi would not come to reinforce them in this situation, so they could only hope for the best. Although Zeral's purple evil sun was extremely powerful, such high-level magic was obviously not something that a few low-level sorceresses could perform smoothly. I can't hold on any longer. Not long after, the death wine that was squandered in the air was exhausted, and the evil sun floating in the air became a setting sun and struggled to support it. The screaming shamans also noticed the shrinking evil sun, so they aimed their staffs at a chaos giant and shouted, "Moo!" The chaos giant, who was originally dumbfounded, immediately had red eyes, and at the same time, he continued to grow fur similar to that of a beastman, as if he was a beastman more than 10 meters tall. Payne's hard fur, plus armor close defense, combined with Hereth wild beast, frenzy, was enough to make this giant the most ferocious death beast on the battlefield. Higgs also obviously noticed the giant with explosive fur all over his body, and hurriedly shouted to the Reaper Ballista on the high ground, "First, knock down that giant, and never let him get close to the city gate. Quickly turn the muzzle and aim at the manticore." The gunners hurriedly turned the muzzle and tried to attack the giant in the distance, but several manticores that had been transformed by transfiguration began to attack. Due to the screaming shaman's buff, These manticores all flew to the city wall fearlessly, ignoring the nearby spears stabbing at them, and began to destroy the ballistas. Stop them. Don't worry about those inferior horned beasts, stop them. Seeing the crossbows being destroyed one after another, Higgs was angry and anxious. He hurriedly rebuked the dread spearmen who were bullying the inferior horned beasts, and told them to quickly fight the scorpion-tailed lions. However, it was too late. The hairy giant had already arrived in front of the city gate, swinging the wooden stick in his hand, and hitting the gate. Dong dong dong. The cold lizard fear knights behind the city gate looked at the crumbling iron gate, tightly grasping their hammers and shields, ready to charge at any time. They are all excellent warriors of noble origin. The enchanted hammers and swords in their hands can easily pierce the giant's body and bring them all kinds of glory. But unfortunately, this is not their home court. Chapter 181. Nagarand is behind. The roar of a dragon resounding through the sky came from afar. Higgs, who was already fighting hard, couldn't help but raise his head and cursed angrily. Damn it, why did you come back at this time? The city gate was about to be broken, and the crossbows were all lost. Anyone with a clear mind could see that the current situation looked very unfavorable to Druki. However, Higgs this time called in the family's most elite, cold lizard dread knights, in order to reverse the declining situation, and kill all these beastmen. These noble children, all from Nagarand, are powerful warriors, and each of them is a good player who can easily kill hundreds of inferior horned beasts or dozens of large horned beasts. As long as they can launch a charge, the situation will improve. When the time comes to turn the tide of the battle, ask the Witch King to reward them according to their merits, and then file a complaint against Rohan and Marina. The fortress will be in our hands. But at this moment, the damn Rohan actually flew back with his humble two-legged dragon and inferior short-lived species, and it is very likely that he will rob him of his military merits. The defense has been broken. The hundreds of silver dragons flying in the sky immediately attracted the attention of all the people and beasts present. Even the giant who was about to hammer open the iron gate raised his head in confusion and looked up at the sky in confusion. Rohan rode on the dragon's back, looking at the billowing smoke on the ground, caused by the fire magic, and couldn't help but grinned. It's so tragic. Fortunately we have timely support, otherwise this fortress will be breached, and then the Lord Witch King will blame us. That would be terrible. Then Rohan turned his attention to the giant, covered with fur and the city gate behind him, that was about to be breached. Looking at the cold lizards who were lined up in neat rows behind the city gate, Rohan's mouth curled up a smile again, and he placed his hands on the dragon's back and ordered, "Ro, I will pass all the divine power in my body to you. You must use your breath with all your strength and burn the giant and the city gate together." After receiving the order, Luobo immediately hovered over the giant. As Rohan injected divine power into her body, the golden dragon eyes shone with sacred light like the morning sun. Unlike the silver dragons, blessed by the ash dragon, the mist lady completely reshaped Luobo's body, not only allowing her to use magic breath, but also to dispel chaos. Under the horrified eyes of all the elves and beastmen, Luobo, blessed by divine power, even purified the surrounding land corroded by chaos, revealing unprecedented green grass. Moo. The screaming shamans immediately realized the danger of Luobo, and several meters long, amber spears immediately flew towards Rohan on the dragon's back, but they were all blocked by the bodies of other silver dragons. Although the amber spear was extremely powerful, since the silver dragons were blessed with magic resistance, only a few bloodstains were left, and they were healing quickly. Mekasha, who was hiding behind the city wall, immediately had a gleam of light in her eyes. The alchemist's instinct made her feel that these silver dragons must be full of treasures. I should find a way to get some in the future. Under the gaze of everyone, Radish finally opened his mouth with a silver glow and sprayed a dazzling column of scorching light at the chaos giant. Boom. Completely different from the previous orange-red blazing breath, Radish's breath failed to ignite the chaos giant's fur, but directly decomposed the entire giant. The chaos giant didn't even have time to scream before he disappeared in this dazzling column of light, disappearing with the iron gate behind him. Higgs frowned as he watched Rohan and Radish show their power, but when he turned his gaze to the gradually decomposing iron city gate, he was so scared that he hurriedly shouted to the people below the city, "Hide quickly." Boom. Hundreds of cold lizard riders and tyrannosaurus who were waiting to charge behind the city looked at the gradually disappearing iron gate in confusion, not noticing their own borders disappearing as well. Because the towering city walls blocked their view, these most elite troops of the Higgs family did not even appear, and they all turned into flying ashes and disappeared in the light column. Everyone, including the beastmen, stared blankly at the white light column that almost blinded their eyes, and even Mekasha looked at the carrot in the air in surprise. She never thought that the breath of this silver two-legged dragon could almost match those of the silver moon dragons in Ulthuan. It was not until the divine power in Rohan's body was about to be exhausted that Rohan put down his hands on the dragon's back with some fatigue and couldn't help rubbing his shoulders. Oh my god, I'm almost drained. It seems that this skill can only be used once a day. Although he said that he was going to be drained, Rohan was still very satisfied looking at the disappearing city gate below and the hundreds of cold lizard riders behind the gate. He had long been thinking about Higgs's cold lizard legion. Such a fierce beast army would be too terrifying in street fighting. Especially the two Tyrannosaurus Rex and the cold lizard dread knights. They were too threatening to his alliance with Marina, and they had to be dealt with first. This time, all the elite troops brought by Higgs should have been dealt with, right? After destroying the elite troops of the friendly army, Rohan rode on Carrot to the sky above the city wall, replenishing his magic power, while shouting with divine power, "Warriors, I know you are all excellent soldiers from Nagarand, but now is the critical moment for the survival of Durachi. Although Nagarus is big, behind us is Nagarand, which is the palace of the Witch King, and that is your home. We have no way to retreat. For the sake of the Witch King and Nagarand, let us crush these flea-ridden beastmen into powder." Rohan, who had followed the Witch King for 100 years, naturally learned some of the ruler's speech methods. This impassioned declaration immediately reversed the originally decadent situation. The Durachi warriors who originally belonged to Higgs roared and launched a fierce attack on the surrounding beastmen. Even the remaining cold lizard riders, after seeing the beastmen all over the mountains outside the city gate, could only silently swallow their hatred for Rohan and charge outside the city gate. Just as Rohan said, they are all locals in the Nagarand area. Whether it is to escape the punishment of the Witch King or to protect their families, they have to fight to the death. As soldiers and knights, they do not have the ability and opportunity to see the battlefield. They only know that they are in a bad situation just now due to lack of information, and Rohan's joining brings hope. Charge. For Nagarand. Can't retreat. For the Witch King. For Cain. Blood sacrifice to the beastmen. Don't fiddle with your broken crossbow. Take up your sword and join the battle. Looking at the army that has completely lost its command in the only more than 100 cold lizard riders under the city wall, Higgs looked at Rohan in the air with a gradually ferocious look. This vengeance is not avenged, and there is no reconciliation. Chapter 182 Tsinch Shaman. The sky was full of figures of silver dragon knights flying on dragons. Looking at the flying dragons that kept spewing orange-red flames, Mekassa's eyes were full of strange colors. She was sure that she had never seen this kind of two-legged flying dragon that could spit out breath. This must be a new creature, very worth studying. Ms. Mekassa. Ms. Mekassa. Just as she was about to find an opportunity to collect the blood of the fire dragons scattered on the ground, a voice suddenly came from the distance calling her. Higgs kept killing the beastmen on the city wall. After much hardship, he came to her and said in an almost resentful tone, "Please shoot down the biggest silver dragon in the sky for me. I want to peel off his skin and pull out his tendons." Are you serious? That's a terrible flying dragon that can resist the amber spear. How can my magic penetrate its scales? Looking at the furious Higgs, Mekassa's heart was full of disdain. He also saw that the behavior of the Dreadlord on the dragon's back was intentional. But so what? It is so sad for weak people in the society of Durachi, not to mention that wanting to order her around is simply a dream. Higgs also saw Mekassa's excuses and could only curse the unreliability of outsiders while ordering the exhausted family sorceresses find the right opportunity to give that damn bastard a soul withering and don't leave any traces. Okay, sir. Looking at Higgs's bloodshot eyes, the sorceresses belonging to the Higgs family did not dare to say anything more and could only operate the wind of magic again. Although this act of assassinating the Lord of Terror is illegal, now there is no outsider except Mekasa, and they can only choose to obey. But once this matter is leaked, it will be a capital crime. Higgs naturally understood this, so he suppressed his anger and resentment, forced a self-righteous smile, and said to Mekasa, "Dear lady, our family will give you a lot of wealth as compensation. Please don't tell anyone about this." "Hehe. I don't. I want to see the generous reward you said now." Mekasa ignored Higgs' request. After all, this guy who is not outstanding in strength and always likes to make trouble seems very unreliable. Didn't he think about what to do if the assassination failed and the Lord challenged him to a duel directly? But if the Flying Dragon Lord is really so vulnerable, then she can also gain the friendship and gratitude of the Higgs family. So now is the time to raise the price. Higgs obviously knew this, so he took off the amber bracelet on his hand and handed it to Mekasa, introducing it. "This is a bracelet found in the stomach of an abyss siren. It is enchanted by the magic of the big toads of the lizardmen. It has the ability to refresh the mind and strengthen the effect of meditation. Is it an enchanted item of the lizardman magic priest?" Looking at this ordinary bracelet, Mekasa put it on her wrist and immediately felt a slight coolness in her brain, and the whole person became much more rational. "This thing is good. Don't worry, I won't betray you." After accepting the bracelet with satisfaction, Mekasa left the city wall. Anyway, he just asked her to keep the secret, not to let her participate in the assassination. Even if she was held accountable by the Lord Witch King, she would not have any responsibility. At most, she would have the bracelet confiscated for not reporting it. What's more, there was a shadow type screaming shaman hiding in the dark at this time, and she could take this opportunity to throw the trouble to others. Perfect. Looking at Mekasa's back humming a little tune as she walked away, Higgs looked at his empty wrist with some pain and cursed, "How greedy. One day I will make you a swordsman, spit out all your money with interest." Then he turned and came to the city wall, staring at the largest silver dragon in the sky, waiting for the opportunity to kill it with one blow. On the back of the dragon in the sky, Rohan didn't know that Higgs was waiting for him to reveal his flaws, but even if he knew, he wouldn't care. "Are you kidding? Who is he?" "He is charged, the chief steward of the Witch King, the Lord of Terror in Grand Town, the Eternal Admiral of the Black Ark, the King of Giants, the fiancé of the Queen of the Clo Empire, the future ruler of the Penda continent, the son of prophecy, the father of dragons, the high-level magician, and the future chosen one of the Lady of the Mist." Looking at the beastman fleeing under the dragon flames below, Rohan's face was full of smiles. The feeling of having air superiority was simply too good. After using his magic shield to block several amber spears that were trying to shoot at Radish, Rohan threw javelins at the Minotaur below and shouted, "Don't stop, Radish. Your task is to spit out all the dragon flames in your body. Do you hear me?" After using the airflow generated by the dive to blow away the beastman's ranks, the silver dragon knights following Radish attacked the Minotaurs one after another. Although the breath of these young silver dragons was not as strong as Radish's, they could still easily grab the Minotaur 2 or 3 meters high on the ground with their claws, and then carry it to the air and throw it to death. The inferior horned beasts and horned beast war groups that lacked armor had no resistance when facing the breath of the silver dragon knights, and were torn into pieces one after another. In addition, the dragon flames of the silver dragons were enchanted nitrogasoline, so the fire quickly began to spread among the beasts. Moo. The fire that spread across the entire battlefield made the horned beasts scream miserably, but even if the screaming shamans racked their brains, they could not think of a solution. The magic of the beast system itself makes the caster grow hard fur and transform into an animal, so they are naturally weak to fire. Moreover, they are all self-taught low-level mages. It is a miracle for them to master 2 or 3 skills, not to mention putting out fires. Just when they were at their wits' end, a horse beast roar suddenly came from the forest behind them. "You useless people, why can't you even do such a small thing?" Black language. Those fire dragons are really terrible. The situation has developed to this point, and we have no way to do it. Black language. Humph, if you destroy the plan of the Great Siege because of your stupidity, then wait to be sacrificed by me. As he spoke, a twisted figure that was silent in the shadows gradually walked out of the forest and revealed his true face. Only about 1.6 meters tall, He looked particularly short in the ranks of beastmen. His two left arms held a staff shining with blue light, and the whole shape looked particularly disgusting. The most eye-catching thing is the small horns on the head and the third eye located between the eyebrows, which constantly emit a strange green light. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183, The Ever-Changing Demon Lord. Seeing this short figure coming out of the woods, the screaming shamans fell to their knees, begging for forgiveness. Although this deformed inferior horned beast shaman was short, they knew very well what kind of terrible energy existed in this small body. They had seen with their own eyes that a mad chaos giant was torn in half by this shaman's magic. A manticore lost its soul just by being touched on the head by him. Even the screaming shamans who led their own clans had never seen such a terrible scene in their lives. The most terrifying thing was that this shaman could summon a strange fat bat with blue feathers all over its body by sacrificing the souls of the prisoners and the losers. It was really terrible. Seeing these once noble screaming shamans kneeling before him, the inferior horned beast shaman sneered and then taunted. The great lord of change has given you the power to release magic, but you can't even deal with a few flying lizards. What's the use of you? No, my lord, let us try again. This time we will definitely do everything we can to shoot down those silver dragons. This is too troublesome. I'd better take your souls directly. As he spoke, the inferior horned beast shaman raised his staff with 3 hands, and a series of dark blue magic winds surrounded the staff and began to extract the souls of these shamans. The shamans groaned in unwillingness and pain, which immediately attracted the horrified eyes of the surrounding beasts and the attention of Rohan. There was no way. This magic wind symbolizing Tsinch was too dazzling. The power that made people disgusted from the heart was enough to disgust all those who could sense the magic wind nearby. Even the sorceresses on the city wall who were preparing to attack Rohan and Mekasha, who was idling with a glass of wine, focused their attention on the inferior horned beast shaman. Kerala, a familiar voice came into his ears, and Rohan's face changed instantly. He directly injected magic power into the ebony javelin, and then threw it at the inferior horned beast shaman. As a traverser who can travel between different worlds, his spatial magic talent may not be strong, but his perception of space is definitely sharp. This bad guy is definitely summoning something, and he must not be allowed to succeed. Since today's God's favored has been used up when pretending to be powerful, and there is little left of Carrot's breath, Rohan decisively ordered, "The wind is tight, all Silver Dragon Knights retreat to Halkadora and observe the development of the situation." Then he took out dozens of bombs and incendiary bombs from the system space, threw them at the position of the inferior horned beast shaman below, and finally evacuated with Carrot without looking back. He was ready to fight against the chaos troops and even a changeable demon lord. Thinking of the possibility of a battle with that Tsinchian demon, Rohan could not help but shout excitedly in his heart, Madam, there may be a chaos demon of Tsinch here. Come and save the child. Rajlia! Rajlia, who was doing research in the Temple of Iris, received Rohan's warning at the first time. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time. Through the time and space card pool, Rohan has already collected various props that can be used to imprison souls and spirits, just to fight against these chaos demons. If you want to completely eliminate chaos, you must first figure out why chaos cannot be eliminated. According to Rohan's analysis, the reason why these chaos demons cannot be completely killed is that every time they are killed in the mortal world, they are physically, and their souls will return to chaos. So, as long as you can take advantage of the moment when they lose their physical bodies and use a method to imprison the souls of the demons, can you prevent the rebirth of the demons? Thinking of this, Rajlia projected her consciousness directly to Halkadora, regardless of the risk of being discovered by Uncle Kane, and came to Rohan. At this time, Rohan had already retreated to the sky above Halkadora with Carrot, and nervously looked at the inferior horned beast shaman who was opening the portal. Although the inferior horned beast had already been covered with wounds, Rohan had no other way to stop its already formed teleportation ritual. However, the inferior horned beast shaman was not in a good condition at this time. The ebony javelin enchanted by Rohan easily pierced through its armor and penetrated its body, leaving a terrifying big hole. Because Rohan dropped dozens of bombs in one breath, the inferior horned beast shaman had already lost his arms and legs, and the only arm was holding the staff alone. Hehe. At this time, the inferior horned beast shaman's eyes were full of madness. For this day, it did not hesitate to sell its soul, just to be able to climb to its current position. As its hand holding the staff trembled slightly, a blue portal slowly tore through the space, revealing the figure inside. Looking at the slowly emerging blue wings and the huge body covered in a cloth robe, Rohan couldn't help but pray in his heart, damn it, I just hope it's not that fat weaver. It's better to be a weaker Lord of Change, so that I can conduct experiments. As a huge head poked out of the portal, Rohan secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and couldn't help but reveal a smile at the corner of his mouth. Great, I don't know him, it seems to be just a low-level demon passing by. As the Lord of Change slowly walked out of the portal, the entire battlefield fell into silence. Even Mekasa and Higgs couldn't help but widen their eyes. Singe. Looking at the strange blue bird that was several meters tall, Higgs was so scared that he retreated again and again, and even began to think about giving up Alcadora. Due to the ban, Higgs was just an ordinary person who could use magic props and had no means of magic resistance at all. Besides, this is not a game, and you won't lose your health bar and limbs after being stabbed. Facing the great demon of Singe, who is known as the strongest mage, the opponent only needs to release a magic missile at will, and he will turn into ashes. Wow, it's a new creature I haven't seen before. The Lord of Change took a look at the battlefield and immediately noticed the silver dragon knights flying in the air, with great curiosity flashing in his golden eyes. However, before he could go forward to take a closer look, he heard the weak voice of the lesser horned beast shaman behind him. Great demon, I have summoned according to your request. Please restore my body and grant me great strength and power. Ah, of course. Everything is in the plan of the Lord of Change. Chapter 184 Chaos Egg. Hearing that the Lord of Change was really going to fulfill his promise, the shaman couldn't help but reveal a look of joy on his blasted face. He used to be just a weak shaman, and the magic he could cast was limited to some harmless tricks. However, due to his identity as a shaman, he was protected by the horned beasts in the tribe, and expanded his horizons in the Chaos Wasteland. He saw the Chaos Ice Dragon that could bring frost storms just by flapping its wings. He also saw other powerful screaming shamans, and even met a Singe demon who was adventuring alone. From the mouth of the demon, he first knew that the world was so vast, and how weak he was. The worst experience in the world is to see the vastness of the world, broaden your horizons, but then discover your own humbleness. If he was still the shaman of the inferior horned beast who was complacent because he could cast some tricks, he would definitely continue to shrink in the Chaos Wasteland willingly. They could be happy to find a corpse that had not yet rotted, and they could cheer for enjoying fresh flesh and blood together, and they would be happy all the time. But now the situation is completely different. The colorful other world that the demon said was like a nightmare that surrounded his ears, making him deeply trapped in it. There were no fresh fruits and brewed beer in the cold Chaos Wasteland, only the Druki slave hunting teams that often entered the wasteland. How he wanted to go to the legendary old continent and bully and plunder the weak humans called Sigma Empire with his compatriots there and drink their beer and blood. In order to become stronger, he did not hesitate to kill the horned beasts that had been protecting him, sacrificed the souls of the entire clan, and finally gained such powerful power. But this is not enough. If you want to cross the distance strait, you must have a stronger power and let the beastmen of the entire Chaos Wasteland work for him. For this reason, he once again sought more powerful power from Singe, and the response he got was to let him lead the beastmen to Halkadora and summon a Lord of Change. Now, he has completed all the tasks assigned to him by the Lord of Change, so it is time to confront Noyan. The Lord of Change stood on the cold land of the Chaos Wasteland, looking at his less than 5 meter tall body with some dissatisfaction. While using magic to heal the dying body of the lesser horned beast shaman, he asked, "The strength of this body is a bit poor. It seems that your mission was not completed successfully. Please forgive me, it's all because of the damn pointed ears on the dragon's back. He disrupted all the plans. Seeing that his body was constantly recovering, the lesser horned beast shaman hurriedly pointed at Rohan in the sky and cursed, as if all the sins were on him. Following the direction pointed by the shaman, the Lord of Change slowly pointed his bird head at Rohan in the sky, and after looking at him with his golden eyes, he couldn't help but grinned. Don't worry, everything is in the plan of the Lord of Change, and no one can go against it. Then, what did the great Lord of Change promise me, and what will be the blessing given to me? As soon as the voice fell, a purple light suddenly lit up from the hands of the Lord of Change, and then shone directly on the inferior horned beast shaman. Looking at the 3 arms and the eyeballs on his forehead that had grown back, feeling the increasingly powerful magic power in his body and the perception of the wind of magic, the inferior horned beast shaman couldn't help but reveal an ugly smile. Sure enough, the great evil god would not deceive him. Looking at the inferior horned beast shaman who was receiving the blessing of chaos below, Rohan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, watching the other party's arms gradually twisted into the shape of a pincer. Why do I feel like I'm going to become an abandoned? Of course, how could the chaos god be so kind as to waste time blessing a mere inferior horn beast? Rajlia's voice entered Rohan's mind, and she was obviously full of disdain for this ungrateful inferior horn beast. What a joke, how can the blessing of the chaos god be so easy to get? If you really only need to complete the tasks arranged by the evil god to get the corresponding rewards, then you are not an evil god, you are a good god. That is to say, do you really think that every god is as easy to talk to as the Lady of the Mist? Only the kind Lady of the Mist will treat her believers as normal creatures. Hearing Rohan's praise, Rajlia's mouth corners slightly raised. Sure enough, her own believers are sensible. While chatting in spirit, the inferior hornbeast shaman below was still enjoying the blue light of blessing, and obviously did not notice that his body was gradually twisting. This power. Under the teasing gaze of the Lord of Change, the body of the inferior hornbeast shaman began to expand rapidly. The strange body over 3 meters long was covered with strange arms, which looked very delicious. The face like a sandworm mouthparts was covered with fine eyeballs, which made the silver dragon knights in Halkadora look embarrassed. They had also fought with the VIP warriors of the snake worship and the heretic giant knights in the continent of Penda, and thought they had seen many twisted monsters. But even so, they had never seen such a disgusting creature. The inferior horned beast shaman, or the chaos egg, had begun to lose his will at this time. He looked down at his twisted body and roared with the last bit of reason. No, this should not be my fate. The hoarse voice came out of the twisted throat. The only thing that could be seen was the claws of the Lord of Change slowly retracted, and the light symbolizing blessing slowly stopped. In his eyes, the world around him was like a piece of shabby wallpaper torn in the rain, slowly disappearing from his sight. At this moment, there was no sound, no light, and everything that could perceive the outside world was deprived, leaving only endless darkness and empty silence. Shaman, stop thinking. Roar. The unconscious chaos egg looked at the closest to it, the Lord of Change, waving its tentacles and fangs to attack the other party. Without memory and reason, the chaos egg could not distinguish between the enemy and itself. It only knew that this guy was the biggest and the most powerful, and it should be very comfortable to fight. Looking at the chaos egg running towards him with its fangs and claws bared, the Lord of Change showed a smile at the corner of his mouth, and then used magic to guide the other party. What a poor little guy. You should go find those elves to fight. I believe their flesh and blood and souls will definitely satisfy you. Chapter 185 Confrontation. While the Lord of Change was busy transforming the Chaos Egg, the situation on the battlefield had changed significantly. Due to the lack of armor, the inferior horned beasts that were originally scattered all over the battlefield had almost all fled in all directions to prevent their fur from being stained with the dragon flames. As for the horned beast war groups with simple armor and the heavily armored large horned beasts, they were entangled with the remnants of the Higgs army. The cold lizard riders continued to charge and slaughtered these weak horned beasts with their enchanted weapons. Even the heavy armor on the large horned beasts could not withstand their attacks. The cold lizards under their crotches also participated in the battle of biting the beastmen. The blood in their mouths stimulated their hunting desire, and they wished they could eat all these upright monster sheep. But as the remaining Minotaurs joined the battlefield, the situation immediately changed. The horned beast war groups holding spears and giant axes were able to barely withstand the charge launched by the cold lizards and dragged them into a one-on-many close combat. The Minotaurs can take the opportunity to launch a back charge, smashing the cold lizards and their riders into pulp with 2-meter-long double axes. Only those cold lizard fear knights who are proficient in controlling cold lizards and enchanted weapons can bypass the Minotaur's charge and try to counterattack with roundabout tactics. But the Minotaurs, who are also stimulated by bloodlust, don't care so much. Even if their bodies are about to be ignited by the hot dragon flames, they will fly madly towards the cold lizard fear knights. An unlucky cold lizard fear knight was quickly caught up by the Minotaur. At the moment, when the opponent was about to fall on him, he stabbed the magic sword in his hand into the opponent's chest. Damn it, how could I die at the hands of you? Before the voice fell, the Minotaur's body weighing several tons slammed hard on the cold lizard and the fear knight. Boom. Looking at the cold lizard that was smashed to death on the spot in his arms and the fear knight who had multiple fractures due to the enchanted armor, the Minotaur used up his last strength to start biting the exposed neck of the opponent. Badgy, everything tastes delicious with the last bite of meat in his mouth. The Minotaur left this world contentedly and slowly closed his scalloped eyes. Raw. After seeing their compatriots eating meat, more Minotaurs followed suit and pounced on the fleeing cold lizard riders. For a moment, the number of casualties of the cold lizard riders began to rise sharply. If it was before the battle, with thousands of cold lizard riders and hundreds of fear knights, they would not be afraid of the desperate attacks of these beastmen. However, Rohan's previous dragon flame directly caused most of the cold lizard riders who were in a dense formation to be killed or injured, and they were not enough to fight the Minotaurs one for one. The situation outside the city was so tense that Higgs and others on the city wall were not having a good time. As the cannon fodder was exhausted, the big horned beasts began to climb the city wall one after another, constantly hacking and killing the surrounding elves. Although the number of big horned beasts was not large, the previous fight with the inferior horned beasts had consumed too much of their physical strength, so they could only let the reserve team take over. Higgs was also a little crazy. He didn't want his soul to fall into the hands of that Tzeentch demon, so he madly killed the surrounding Bion beasts while shouting, "Focus on the Lord of Change from a distance, and never let him get close to me. Once his soul is taken away, he will be trapped in the torture of the Chaos Demon forever, and may even become that hideous Chaos Egg. He is only 110 years old, and he doesn't want to be knocked down by the big bad bird of Tzeentch." Hearing Higgs's desperate roar, the sorceresses could only constantly mobilize the magic wind in the air and prepare to attack the Lord of Change in the distance. Harvest Scythe. Similar to the hazy pendulum, Soul Vortex shoots a light ball that will explode. Kaloi's Shackles. Since there are already more than 100,000 fresh corpses on the battlefield, the wind of death in the air is abnormally abundant, enough to support them to use various harmful magic. Phantom sickles and purple light balls flew towards the direction of the changeable lord, as if they were going to chop the blue chicken in white robes into pieces. This was the magic they were most proud of, and its power was even enough to break the scales of an adult dragon. Little trick. However, the changeable lord just looked at the flying magic with disdain, tapped the staff in his hand lightly on the ground, and a dark blue energy shield with complex runes rose out of thin air. Boom boom, a series of explosions covered the entire energy shield, and the body of the changeable lord disappeared in the smoke, making it impossible to see the scene clearly. Everyone, including Higgs, looked at the thick smoke in the distance with eager eyes. Such a powerful move should be able to destroy the Chaos Demon, right? Only Rohan and Mekasa frowned. They knew very well that the changeable lord was so terrible that he could not be easily killed by magic attacks. He as expected, along with the huge blue wings blowing away the surrounding dust and fog, the intact body of the Lord of Change gradually emerged. Looking at Rohan in the distance with interest, he could feel a looming threat from Rohan, which was the only existence he could not see through. Every time he tried to find the other party's weakness by peeping into Rohan's eyes, he always found that this guy's fate was covered by a layer of fog. This made him full of curiosity. In front of everyone present, the Lord of Change bowed slightly to Rohan and asked politely, "Noble and strange dragon knight, I can't see through your fate and future. May I have the honor to know your name?" Someone named Higgs is a dreadlord of Nagarand, and also your enemy. Rohan would not let down his guard because of the other party's politeness, so he chose to lie without hesitation and introduced himself in a hypocritical way in the third person. He was afraid that this guy had a magic weapon similar to the King of Gold and Silver Horns, so he didn't dare to use his real name. The Lord of Changes obviously saw that Rohan was lying, but he didn't get angry. Instead, he became more interested. Isn't this opponent who is full of unknowns and cautious just the favorite target of that Sinch's pranks? Please don't worry, friendly stranger. I just hope to know more about my opponent before the battle begins. Maybe we can talk. It's Sinch's words. I don't believe it. With the Lady of the Mist backing him up, Rohan was naturally not afraid of the unknown Lord of Changes in front of him, not to mention that the Lady of the Mist had just told him that he could beat this guy. Chapter 186 Chaos Invasion. Young elf, it seems you don't know what you are facing yet. Looking at Rohan, who dared to speak so arrogantly, the Lord of Change did not attack out of anger, but looked around with some vigilance. He did not deny that Rohan had some strength, but he did not think that this was the reason why Rohan dared to speak so arrogantly to him. There must be some secrets in this elf that he did not know yet, but he just did not discover them for the time being. After waiting for a while, the Lord of Change, who thought he was safe, let down his guard a little and continued to respond to Rohan's provocation politely. Please rest assured, I will not take your soul so easily, but will take you into the arms of Tsinch. With a sure victory, he inserted the magic wand in his hand into the ground and instantly summoned a portal from behind him, summoning his own Tsinch believers. Thousands of Tsinch terrors holding daggers and fireballs rushed out of the portal with a smile, and from time to time threw the fireballs in their hands at the Dread Knights, who were fighting with the Great Horned Beast. Countless pink balls of light danced in the air, turning into meteors, and falling on the bodies of the Dread Knights, melting their enchanted armors easily. Although many Bion beasts wailed and were burned to death by the fireballs of the Tsinch terrors, these low-level demons did not care. The lives of the beastmen were not lives, who would care about their lives. Quick, retreat. Go back to the city quickly. These chaos demons are not something we can fight against. Due to the previous life-threatening attack of the Minotaur, the remaining cold lizard riders were less than 100, and almost everyone was injured. Faced with the overwhelming fireballs and terrors, even the arrogant Dread Knights of the past could no longer bear the fear in their hearts, and began to turn around and flee into the city. Although they were cruel to the enemy, they were not stupid enough to think that they could defeat thousands of terrors with just a few dozen cold lizard riders. They could drown them with just a mouthful of spit, not to mention that the fireballs they threw at them were magically damaging. On the city wall, Higgs looked at the defeated cold lizard riders outside the city and had already given up hope on the battle. If it weren't for that bastard Rohan's dragon breath that killed hundreds of his cold lizard riders on the spot, how could the current battle situation become so corrupt? Looking at the overwhelming blue horror monsters outside the city and the soldiers who were still fighting with the beastmen, Higgs decisively turned around and left the city wall. Mekasha saw Higgs leaving the city wall at the first time and hurriedly grabbed him and asked, "Now your soldiers are fighting hard. Even if you want to escape, where can you escape to? I don't care so much. That's the Lord of Change. I won't let my soul fall into the eternal torture of being devoured." Higgs shook off Mekasha's arm in a hysterical manner, not only because of the Chaos Army outside the city, but also because his family's future was completely over. When the Witch King issued a conscription order a few years ago, although his family also sent troops to reinforce, they still retained a large number of private soldiers. Although there are still nearly 10,000 infantrymen fighting, the 2,000 cold lizard riders who symbolize the family's heritage are almost wiped out. You have to know that these riders are all noble children who are loyal to the family. Each of them is an elite warrior cultivated by the family for hundreds of years, but now they are all gone. When Higgs thought about what kind of punishment he might receive after returning to the family, his eyes were full of despair. Looking at Higgs, who had completely lost his fighting spirit, Mekasa slowly let go of his hand, and a trace of disdain and helplessness flashed in her eyes. Please, the Lord of Change is not immortal. Although he is very good at magic attacks and magic resistance, all the Lords of Change have a weakness: fear of close combat. Of course, the so-called fear of close combat is relative. After all, the golden scimitar and sickle-like claws on the opponent's waist are not for show. But now with the assistance of her, a high-level sorceress, Mekasa, and the assistance of those death sorceresses, it is not impossible to repel, or even kill a big demon. If Higgs could have shown some courage, and really fought against the Lord of Change, Mekasa would have had a new look at this typical vicious lord. After seeing the disdain in Mekasa's eyes, Higgs did not say much, but decisively left the city wall, just like he did not dare to accept Rohan's duel that year. He likes to torture slaves and losers, but he would never like to be tortured by himself. Looking at Higgs's back, the sorceresses on the city wall who were preparing black magic couldn't help but put down their staffs and looked at each other. Compared with Mekasa who had no worries, most of them were sorceresses who had handles in the hands of the Higgs family. If they did not receive accurate orders, they would not dare to leave their posts. Looking at these bewildered sorceresses, Mekasa couldn't help but sigh. They once had tens of thousands of soldiers, and they could be safe as long as they defended the city, but they had a conflict with the local lord. Higgs, that useless thing, really ruined the originally good situation. Don't worry about assassination. When the silver-armored lord in the sky fights with the Lord of Change, you will come with me to assist him. But, Lord Higgs, don't worry about that rubbish. Do you think Higgs's punishment is more terrible, or that the soul falls into the hands of the Lord of Change is more terrible? Hearing this, all the sorceresses fell silent, and began to think. They did have something in the hands of the Higgs family, but they were more unwilling to have their souls taken away by chaos. After comparing the value of both sides, the sorceresses obediently began to manipulate the wind of death, and prepare to buff Rohan, who was flying towards the Lord of Change in the distance. On the other side, Rohan had already changed to the older sword, Conqueror, and at the same time, under the guidance of the Lady of the Mist, he ordered Radish, circle to the left, and prepare to breathe. Raw, Radish suddenly did a carp somersault in the air, flapping his transformed wings continuously, avoiding the magic bullets fired by the Lord of Change on the ground. The Lord of Changes was just like a hardcore player of shooting games. He kept pointing his staff at the carrot and muttered, "It shouldn't be like this. How could my calculation be so off? It must be that the wind of magic here is too thin." Seeing the Lord of Change's distressed look, a fear demon standing nearby couldn't help but let out a strange chuckle, but was fanned away by the other party's wings. "Don't talk. You're disturbing my eyes." Chapter 187, Confrontation with the Demon Lord. Looking at the silver dragon dodging in the air, the Lord of Change shot out magic bullets like a gambler, trying to knock the opponent down from the air. However, Rohan was like a mosquito on a summer night, always able to dodge the opponent's attack from the most tricky angles, and even able to use soul quenching to counterattack. Faced with this kind of fire that can directly damage the soul, even the Lord of Change did not dare to resist it, and could only summon the magic screen to resist. Looking at Rohan flying in the air, the Lord of Change finally took off his elegant disguise, flapped his wings and flew up, cursing in his mouth. "Why can't I hit it all the time? Is this also in the plan of the Lord of Change? You know, every time he shoots, he will actively control the magic bullets to fly towards Rohan, but every time he is about to get close to Rohan, he will deviate from the control." He didn't know that the reason why he couldn't hit it was not because of his calculation problems, but because the Mist Lady was always assisting the other party. Looking at the ever-kanging demon lord who was about to fly into the air, Rajlia was as excited as a player playing the Imperial Fist, and commanded with her spiritual sense, "Don't be afraid, I will bless you. You just need to hold the sword, and jump directly towards him, and leave the rest to me." Really? I don't think this plan is very reliable. Looking at the ground, that was nearly 1,000 meters away, even Rohan, who always prided himself on being brave, couldn't help swallowing his saliva, and a trace of panic flashed in his eyes. There was no prop in his system space to ensure that he would land smoothly. If there was any mistake, he would really be smashed into a pulp. However, Rajlia directly offered him a condition that he could not refuse, and said to him in a charming tone, "Handsome boy, have you forgotten the position of God's chosen that I promised to give you before? As long as we conceal this ever-kanging demon lord, you will be qualified to be named Mist God's Chosen. Damn, let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, Rohan suddenly jumped down from the dragon's back, holding the older rune sword tightly in his hands, and stabbed in the direction of the Lord of Change. The Lord of Change, who was flying below, obviously did not expect Rohan to use such a desperate knockdown, but still pointed his staff at Rohan with a sly smile. In the air, Rohan, who had no help, was like a living target, unable to dodge his magic missiles. Along with a blue magic circle rising from the staff, a purple flame instantly gushed out of the magic circle, covering the entire sky. Let's see how you can hide. Facing the purple flames coming towards him, Rohan hurriedly summoned a magic shield in front of him, trying to wrap himself up. However, the magic of the great demon of Tsinch was far beyond his imagination. After only 3 seconds, the blue magic shield in front of him began to be slowly corroded. Most importantly, due to the severe obstruction of his vision, Rohan had lost the position of the Lord of Change, and it was clear that he must have left the direction of his fall. Fortunately, Lady Mist did not remain mute like Ashurian, but transmitted a voice to him. He is in front of you on the left. Get ready. 3, 2, 1, take off. As soon as he finished speaking, he felt as if he had grown wings, and suddenly rushed out of the flames, regaining a little vision. And Rohan also reacted, holding the rune sword upside down with his left hand, holding the hilt with his right hand, and stabbing fiercely at the place covered by purple flames in front of him on the left. With a shrill scream, Rohan's rune sword went straight into the chest of the Lord of Change, and with the help of Rohan's fall, a bloody wound was directly cut on his chest. The sorceresses on the city wall looked at the Lord of Change, who was gradually falling from the sky to the ground, and stood there in a daze, not knowing what to do. Instead, Mekasha was the first to react. She raised her staff and pointed it at Rohan in the distance, urging him anxiously, "Don't stand there stupidly. Hurry up and help the Lord of Terror. Otherwise, it will be over when the Lord of Change reacts." As she spoke, a cloak flashing with orange-red flames suddenly appeared on Rohan. The flames did not hurt Rohan, but began to burn the feathers of the Lord of Change. This was the effect of the fire defense magic, flowing fire cloak. After barely preventing himself from falling to the ground, the Lord of Change freed his hands and grabbed Rohan on his chest with his sickle-like claws. However, Rohan got ahead of him and hurriedly left the Lord of Change's chest. After pulling out the rune sword, he then summoned Soul Quenching out of thin air again and shot it at the defenseless Lord of Change in front of him. Boom. The icy white quenching fire exploded in the Lord of Change's chest, constantly passing through the sword wound left by Rohan on his chest, burning his flesh and soul. Looking at the Lord of Change, who was half kneeling on the ground and wailing in pain, Rohan did not intend to relax his guard. Instead, he took out a number of Imperial bombs from the system space. He really couldn't stop using this kind of weapon that could easily cause large-scale physical damage. Although I don't know if it will work on you, I think it should be much better after being enchanted, right? Thanks to the supplement from the Lady of the Mist, Rohan was able to inject the magic power in his body into these bombs, and then ignited these blue glowing bombs, and threw them out. Boom boom boom. The beastmen and horror demons who were originally attacking the city wall looked at the Lord of Change covered in flames in horror, and it was simply unimaginable what was happening. After all the bombs in the space were thrown away, Rohan still took out an Icelema silver shield from the system space, and taunted the smoke. "Lord of Change, you should be a roasted chicken now, right?" He was not naive to believe that this method could kill a chaos demon, but at such a distance, even the Lord of Change could not cast a spell. "You should know that this rune sword has a armor breaking effect. The Lord of Change, whose armor is already very low, is likely to be seriously injured by the explosion. You pissed me off, mortal." Suddenly, a black shadow rushed out of the smoke at an imperceptible speed, followed by a dazzling golden light, which directly knocked Rohan, who raised his shield, more than 10 meters away. The Lord of Change, who originally had gorgeous feathers, has now been dyed grey, and the sword wound on his chest has expanded into a blood hole, with wisps of purple blood emitting. At this time, the Lord of Change has drawn the golden scimitar from his waist, and the staff in his left hand is emitting a faint green light, healing the wounds on his body. Obviously, this boss has entered the second form. Chapter 188 Choice. How miserable it is. I was injured like this by a mere mortal elf. Looking at the huge wound on his chest, the Lord of Changes couldn't help but touch his purple blood and sighed. Who is he? He is a great demon under the Lord of Changes, the Lord of Changes who can command countless low-level demons. Although he is not as strong as his colleagues, he is at least a 3-good employee who is appreciated by the Lord of Changes, and personally assigned the task of invading the mortal world. If I'm really defeated by a mortal elf, it will not only be a disgrace to myself, but also a disgrace to the majesty of the Lord of Changes. Where are you looking at? Just as the Lord of Changes was feeling emotional, Rohan took the initiative to attack, and attacked the grey bird. The rune sword in Rohan's hand suddenly flashed with a dazzling flame, and the entire sword body was covered with flames, slashing towards the wings of the Lord of Changes. As long as we can destroy his flying ability, close combat will be beneficial to us. But the Lord of Change obviously knew this. After all, the instinct inherited from Tzeentch made him prefer to attack the enemy with magic in the air, rather than rushing up to fight in close combat like Con. After raising the golden scimitar in his hand, the Lord of Change confidently prepared to face Rohan's rune sword, and then took the opportunity to leave the ground and start his own kite tactics. His calculations would not be wrong. The reason why he was stabbed by Rohan before must be because of his negligence. However, he did not know that when a dueler with 55 melee attack points rushed in front of him, the most correct choice should be to turn around and run. Ding ga ga. A sharp sound of fighting entered the ears of the Lord of Change, and immediately made him feel unprecedented discomfort. The Lord of Change, whose armor was almost zero due to armor breaking, was actually repelled by Rohan for several steps. His huge body suddenly shook, and he looked at his shaking arms in surprise. How can this guy be so strong? Exclamation mark. Don't even think about running. Seeing that the Lord of Change was repelled by him, Rohan continued to attack even more fiercely, ready to find the right opportunity to cut off the demon's wings. The Lord of Change would naturally not sit still and wait for death, but every time he tried to leave the battle, he would be attacked by the carrots in the sky. For a while, the dignified Lord of Change was forced to retreat again and again, constantly using scimitar magic to resist Rohan's slashes and carrots' dragon breath. The female sorcerers on the wall looked at the Lord of Change, who was retreating step by step, in amazement. They would not believe that the Lord of Change would be so powerful. There was only one possibility. Could the strength of this silver-armored lord exceed that of the Lord of Change? Exclamation mark. A strange color flashed in Mekisha's eyes. She could see that Rohan did not intend to let the Lord of Change pull away, so she decisively ran down the wall and chanted, "Red Wind Aksha, Phoenix of Fire, give me the power to burn everything." A stream of red light appeared on the staff again, giving Mekisha great confidence. Due to the appearance of the Lord of Change, the wind of magic in the air was constantly replenished, and even the Phoenix of Fire, which had difficulty adapting to cold areas, became active. With such abundant wind of magic, she was confident that she could restrain a Lord of Change in a short period of time. On the other side, Rohan continued to resist the magic and scimitar that the Lord of Change tried to force him away, while continuously firing, soul-quenching, to burn the opponent's soul. The best way to fight against the great demon of Tzeentch is to attack their souls directly. However, the Lord of Change simply flapped his wings and blew away the nearly half-meter-sized dark blue flame, then took advantage of the momentum to fly up from the ground and sarcastically said, "Young elf, your magic attainments are so poor that you can only rely on sneak attacks to work. Is that really the case?" Looking at the Lord of Change, who was using the magic screen to resist the carrot dragon's breath in midair, Rohan took a breath and a strange smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This stupid bird was finally fooled. Although Rohan was able to gain the upper hand in the battle with the opponent, the difference in size still forced him to use magic to suck his feet to the floor to avoid being knocked away. In this case, it was difficult for Rohan to defeat the opponent in close combat, and the Lord of Change, who had no chance to cast a spell, could not cause any damage to him. Since there was no way to do anything to each other, let's use the ultimate move to resolve the battle. Rohan slowly pulled out the Harry Potter's wand from the system space, and under the surprised gaze of the Lord of Change, he asked Ms. Misty, "Ms. Misty, are you sure you can really make me use this trick?" Yeah, don't worry, with my support, I will definitely give him a big surprise. Facing Rohan's question, Rajlia's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and she controlled her consciousness to slowly put her hand on Rohan's shoulder. She could let chaos mock her believers, or she could put down her airs and play with her believers, but she didn't want to hear her believers question her strength. A stream of divine power poured into Rohan's body. The huge divine power instantly made Rohan's body emit a holy light, and even dispelled the chaotic erosion within a radius of 100 miles. I feel full of power. Looking at Rohan, who was covered with blue lightning, a trace of horror appeared in the eyes of the Warhammer demon lord, and he was so scared that he hurriedly flew into the air. Through the blue lightning, he could vaguely see the news of his own death. This is no longer a simple elf, and he must punch hard. However, how could Rohan watch the blue goo fly away? He roared directly at the carrot in the sky. Hold him. Eluobo also saw the plan of his male master, so he simply hardened his heart and swooped down to the Warhammer demon lord at the risk of dying together. Two pairs of powerful hind legs grabbed the Warhammer demon lord like sharp claws, and the huge physique that was dozens of times larger than the Warhammer demon lord seemed to be able to easily tear the opponent into pieces. However, the Lord of Change was so cunning that he could not be caught by the fledgling Luobo, so he used shadow magic to conjure 4 phantoms, which flew in all directions. Seeing this, Luobo showed a trace of anxiety in his eyes. He could only use his dragon claws to disperse one of the clones, and then spit at the other 2. Gagab, one of them turned into a phantom and disappeared, and the other was also affected by the hot flames, and disappeared before it touched the flames. Fool, idiot. For a while, only 2 Lords of Change were left in the sky, making strange mocking noises. Looking at the 2 Lords of Change in the air, Rohan's staff kept crackling, and his eyes were filled with hesitation. Choose one of the 2, which one should I fight? Chapter 189, Soul Collection. Let's play a game. You only have one choice. Which one do you want to choose? Looking at the tangled Rohan below, the 2 changeling lords couldn't help but show off, flapping their wings and making strange noises. As an expert in shadow magic, he likes to use phantom clones to deceive and then find the right opportunity to counterattack. He can see that, although Rohan's move is powerful, it can only be used once in a short period of time, and he now has 2 clones, so the advantage is mine. Looking at the 2 changing lords who kept making strange noises in the air, Luobo was ready to pounce on them angrily, but was stopped by Rohan, who smiled and said, "Don't worry, I have seen through his poor magic and guessed which clone is the real one." "Oh, did you really figure it out?" Seeing the confident look on Rohan's face, Changing Lord couldn't help his curiosity and flew directly over Rohan and asked, "Young elf, I assure you that my real body is hidden in these 2, so which one do you guess is the one on the left or the one on the right?" Looking at Rohan, who was holding the magic wand and constantly selecting clones below, Changing Lord smiled for a while. He didn't lie, his real body was indeed hidden in these 2 clones, but this didn't mean he would surrender. He had already made full preparations for Rohan's seemingly powerful magic, and there was almost no chance of being hit. Even if he was really unlucky enough to be chosen, he could immediately activate misdirection to make Rohan think that he had successfully hit him, so that he would relax his guard. He could only use the illusion to sneak behind Rohan and take him away directly with a set of silky little combos. Not only that, he also wanted to imprison Rohan's soul and seal him in his cage forever, and then taunt him when he remembered. Seeing Rohan pointing the staff in his hand at his clone, the corners of the mouth of the Lord of Change could not help but rise, and secretly began to prepare to release the spell. "I choose to do it. Haha. Wow." Suddenly, a rope emitting scorching light was thrown from midair to his true god, and instantly tied up the Lord of Change, who was focusing all his attention on Rohan. The flames continued to burn his feathers, and after a while, his gorgeous wings were severely burned, and he could only slowly fall to the ground. It was not until then that the Lord of Change noticed that a female sorceress with a wind of fire all over her body had come behind him, and in her hand was the flaming rope that was wrapped around him. That was the fire-binding magic, Crimson Band, refer to Doctor Strange's magic whip. No, don't. Looking at the gradually disappearing phantom beside him, the face of the Lord of Change finally showed a panic expression and began to struggle madly. He was not afraid of the fire of the sorceress. This injury was harmless to him. He only needed to wave the staff casually to heal. What he was really afraid of was the blue staff that Rohan pointed at him. The sorceress who bound the Lord of Change was Mekisha. At this time, she was looking at the staff in Rohan's hand in surprise. While pulling the flame rope in her hand tightly, she asked, "Where did you learn magic? Have you forgotten the ban of the Lord Witch King? Oh my god, I really don't want to explain it to everyone. This is a gift from God, not real magic." Rohan did not have too much dialogue with this unknown sorceress, but decisively shot a lightning bolt from the staff, aiming directly at the Lord of Change. Arcane disintegration can break down any object into its most basic particle form, and even a demon body cannot resist it. As a high-level spell that complements soul tempering, the former can shatter a demon's body, while the latter can directly damage a demon's soul. Used together, the effect is even better. Humhumap, the Lord of Change couldn't help but let out a painful wail, and immediately made the fear demons that were attacking the city wall turn around and look at their master turning into ashes in horror. This kind of pain of directly decomposing the flesh is obviously not something a demon body can resist. Coupled with the divine power of Lady of the Mist, even the great demon of Tsinj can hardly resist it. Looking at his disappearing body, the Lord of Change knew that he had gone too far this time, so he roared at Rohan with a remaining bird head. "I curse you, lowly mortal creature. This is not the end, this is just the beginning of the end. We will meet again, next time, in the next reincarnation." Obviously, the Lord of Change, like other chaos demons, thought that he would be exiled to the warp to wait for rebirth, so he started to talk nonsense with Rohan. Seeing that their boss was defeated, the horror demons who were attacking the city wall were also scared and turned into ashes and fled back to the warp. For a while, the field was full of demonic light spots, which gave the soldiers who survived the battle a strange sense of peace. The battle is finally over. Even Mekisha retracted the fire whip in her hand and shrugged helplessly to Rohan, trying to comfort the young lord who fought against the great demon. Having had several battle experiences with chaos, she naturally knew the difficulty of demons, so she was ready to explain to Rohan why this happened. However, contrary to everyone's expectations, Rohan did not show any regret on his face, but smiled evilly and said, "What are you so arrogant about, blue-skinned fat chicken? When did I allow you to leave? You." The Lord of Changes thought that this was Rohan's curse before he left, so he did not take it to heart, but was ready to mock him. However, there was a sudden loud noise in the sky, which made his soul, which was about to return to chaos, tremble, and he looked up at the horizon in fear. He saw that the turbid dark clouds that originally shrouded the chaos wasteland were all dispersed by a huge beam of light, and the holy light that made the demons disgusted fell from the sky and shone on his soul. Not good. Very bad. Looking at this light, the Lord of Change felt very bad, so he hurriedly accelerated the speed of his soul returning to the subspace, but was horrified to find that he had lost contact with the subspace. You know, this kind of thing has never happened, even when he fought with the big toads living in the rainforest, not to mention losing contact. This is really terrible. In the void, Rajlia took out a small red and white ball from her arms, threw it at the soul of the Lord of Change, and said with a mischievous smile, "You will stay here forever." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190, Collected. I'm the Lord of Change, how could I lose to a lowly mortal elf like you? Realizing that his soul was being continuously sucked into this strange little ball, the Lord of Change finally fell into madness. As a chaos demon, after his mortal body was destroyed, his soul would return to the soul forge in the warp, waiting for the next rebirth. As long as the great Lord of Change still needs his service, he can return to the Fortress of Despair in the realm of Tsinj, and continue to return as a Lord of Change. But if his soul cannot return to the warp, he will not be able to obtain a new body, and will gradually be forgotten by Tsinj. You must know that the Lord of Change is fickle. If he cannot return to the warp in time, there may be a new great demon to replace him. The concept of time does not exist in the warp. For every second he is trapped in the mortal world, decades or even hundreds of years may have passed in the warp. During this period, he, who is already at the lowest level of the 9 levels of the Lord of Change, is very likely to be replaced by those various latecomers. No, I will never allow this to happen. Thinking that he might fall out of favor, the Lord of Changes, regardless of the risk of his soul being torn apart, prepared to forcefully break through the attraction of the sphere and escape into the subspace. However, for some reason, the once intimate magical wind isolated him like a grumpy girlfriend, and even if he tried his best, he could not cast any magic. In the end, under the expectant gaze of Rohan and Lady of the Mist, the soul of the Lord of Change was gradually sucked into the red and white sphere. No, this should not be my destiny. In his dying moments, the Lord of Change's eyes seemed to see through the bright holy light and saw a colorful cloud hidden in the sky. What a gorgeous cloud it was, with the sun shining. It kept changing into various colors, which looked particularly charming. Lost bird. Could it be that everything that happened to him was planned? With all the doubts in his heart, the Lord of Changes slowly lost consciousness in reluctance and pain, and his soul was completely absorbed by the sphere on the ground. It actually worked. It seems that Lady Mist has really developed something good during this period. Looking at the small ball that rolled on the ground a few times and then bounced up, Rohan couldn't help but smile. He didn't expect that this Pokeball would actually work. In the past few years, he bought a lot of random things from the system mall, such as Pokemon Pokeball and Sealing Scroll, etc., and various sealing treasures from other worlds are countless. In order to prevent the devil from being reborn again and again, he specially gave all these things to Lady Mist, and finally developed a Pokeball that can seal the big devil. As for why it is a Pokeball, it is completely out of Rohan's own bad taste. As long as his own god-making plan can succeed, countless faith powers will be fed back to Lady Mist, and Lady Mist can become an existence comparable to the 4 gods of chaos. Aren't there 4 evil gods known as tens of billions of demon believers? I will directly bring 500 plain worlds, and the requirements are not too much. Each world will provide 100 million people to help fight against chaos. By then, even if there are billions of subsidies, every good brother will come to chop chaos. Not to mention, being able to destroy the 4 chaos gods, at least they can be equal. Moreover, these Pokeballs can be saved in hand, and in the future, the Mist Lady can purify their power to create more living saints and chosen ones. It's perfect. After picking up the Pokeball from the ground with satisfaction, Rohan began to think about where to put it. Such a precious thing. If someone accidentally opens it because of their dirty hands, it would be really bad luck. Mekasa stared blankly at Rohan putting the Pokeball back into his system space, and her mind was full of the screams of the Lord of Change when he was sealed. It's over? The dignified Lord of Change? Is it so easy to be imprisoned? As a female sorceress who survived the Battle of Chaos Invasion, Mekasa still has an idea of the strength of the Lord of Change. Although she succeeded in her sneak attack just now by luck thanks to the abundant magical wind in the air, she was not naive enough to think that she would be a match for the Lord of Change. It is no exaggeration to say that even a Lord of Change of the lowest order would be far superior to her in terms of magical attainments. And now, this unknown Lord of Terror could actually imprison a Lord of Change, which was incredible. You imprisoned a Lord of Change? To be precise, it was his soul. If nothing unexpected happens, this Lord of Disease will never appear in the mortal world. Looking at the sorceress who took the initiative to assist him, Rohan did not relax his guard, but put his hand on the hilt of the sword. After all, now that chaos has retreated, the Norskins and Beastmen are no longer a force to be reckoned with, and it is time to settle accounts with them and Higgs. And these sorceresses are undoubtedly family sorcerers under Higgs. If nothing unexpected happens, they will be Rohan's next enemies. After seeing the potential hostility in Rohan's eyes, Mekasha put down the staff in her hand with a wry smile, raised her hands and explained, "You don't have to be so hostile to us. Higgs, that weakling, has already fled the battlefield, so the remaining soldiers of Halkadora belong to you." The reason why Mekasha said this was not only because she looked down on Higgs's desertion, but also because he violated her responsibilities as a lord. Higgs's behavior of abandoning the army and running away has violated the feudal laws of Nagaroth, and he is not qualified to continue to command the army. Therefore, even though most of the sorceresses and rookie soldiers in the city are private soldiers of the Higgs family, Rohan has the right to command them in legal terms. Seeing the sincerity on Mekis's face, Rohan put down his hand on the hilt, touched the carrot head beside him and asked, "It sounds good. Then can you guarantee that there are a few sorceresses who are truly willing to be loyal to me? You need to talk to me in person. Anyway, I personally think that you should be quite competent as the new leader." Mekis shrugged. Anyway, the Higgs family will definitely be liquidated by the Lord Witch King, and her balance will probably not be received. It is better to find a new owner as soon as possible. Rohan, who was talking, did not notice that Rajlia's consciousness behind him was raising her head, her eyes fixed on the colorful cloud that was slipping away quickly in the sky. It was not until the cloud disappeared above the chaotic wasteland that Rajlia retracted her gaze, looked at Rohan's cheek gently and murmured, "The handsome boy is being targeted. It seems that it is time to strengthen it." Chapter 191 Subspace. Warp. Absolute Fortress. The twisted warp is filled with countless blue and purple chaotic winds, which are the life source for the chaos demons to survive. Unlike the material universe of the mortal world, as a projection world composed of the thoughts and emotions of intelligent creatures, there is no concept of time and space here, and there is no constraint of moral laws. There is no beginning and no end, no boundaries, no good and no evil. This is a warp. And it is in such a space without any physical laws that a majestic castle built of crystal stands. Countless twisted spires continue to emerge on the disordered foundation of the castle. Except for the powerful Lord of Change, even the demons cannot completely distinguish which spire is real. The azure magic flames continue to gush out from the windows and gates of the castle, adding a bit of illusory beauty to this magnificent castle. The most forbidden books in the world are stored here, but there is also valuable knowledge that can make the most powerful demon princes excited, whether it is the memory fragments of those who are worthy of being called great men or the history that is intertwined in reality and fiction, or the potential description of the future world that is imagined or actual. Countless horrors walk through it, acting as administrators of the weird library, tirelessly maintaining the order in the castle that the Lord of Change hates from the bottom of his heart. In the castle, many Lords of Change who are flipping through books and scrolls are curiously looking at a constantly changing room, with undisguised prying eyes flashing. That is the boudoir of the great Lord of Change, Singe, and what is stored in it is what they, as servants, covet the most, the Well of Eternity. You must know that the Well of Eternity contains knowledge that even Singe himself covets, but because the Well of Eternity is too dangerous, even the Lord of Change himself dare not use it for a long time. Although there is no concept of time in the subspace, it was the first time that they encountered the Lord of Change staying in it for such a long time. Did something big happen in the past or future world? Damn, I also want to know what happened. Every Lord of Change felt that his heart was itchy, as if it was tickled by Nurgling, and he was eager to know what happened. Just as the whole library fell into silence, a Lord of Change could no longer suppress his curiosity, licked his face, and came to a two-headed lord and asked, "Carlos, you have the ability to see the future, so do you know what happened?" The great prophet knew you would ask this question, so he has prepared two options for you in advance. As soon as the voice fell, one of the two-headed monster birds' heads couldn't wait to quarrel. From the expectation on his face, it is not difficult to see that he has already prepared for the answer. However, before Carlos finished speaking, he heard another Lord of Change asked him with a sly smile, "Don't rush to answer, Carlos. I want to ask the head on your left first. What is 1 plus 2? God of Singe, I really like your question so much. I really want to give a big reward to the demon who first asked this question. The answer is of course 4. Quote, the head on Carlos' left face was full of helplessness. He couldn't see everything that was happening at the moment, but he could still see the ill intentions of his comrades through the future. He really hated the person who first asked this math question, which made him unable to become a riddle man every time. I don't know if it was because of the side effects of entering the Well of Eternity that year, Carlos' body not only became abnormally old, but when the two heads were asked questions, only one could tell the truth and the other could tell a lie. Although he often chose to lift the seat and not answer when facing questions from the weak, it was obvious that all the Lords of Change were not much weaker than him. Now that his head that told lies was tricked out, these guys would definitely find ways to force him to tell the truth. As expected, all the Lords of Change turned their eyes to the head on Carlos' right side and asked impatiently, "What will the great Lord of Change say when he comes out? When I enter the mortal world, what powerful enemies will I encounter, and how should I deal with them? Please tell me which team I should vote for in the next angry football. I lost more than 1,000 souls in the last bet, which is a big loss." The quarreling gave Carlos a headache. Although he could look forward to the future infinitely, what he hated most was that others asked him about the future. Some little secrets are no longer secrets if they are told out. What fun is there when they come into effect? Fortunately, the rescue came soon. Change. This is the thousands of changes I expect. Bahahaha, accompanied by a sharp and weird laugh, the Lord of Change's boudoir was pushed open, and a constantly twisting blue figure slowly floated out of the room. The moment they saw that figure, all the Lords of Change, including Carlos, lowered their heads obediently, offering their respect and loyalty to the other party. The one who came was the Lord of Change, Sinch. Although they all coveted Sinch's incomparable and vast knowledge, it did not mean that they would betray the Lord of Change. This person could easily control their fate. If they showed any disrespect, they might fall into the cycle of death without knowing it. What they wanted to know more now was what the Lord of Change was talking about. It's so comfortable. I haven't seen such a drastic change for a long time. Sinch didn't care about the flattery of these Lords of Change. Countless eyeballs all over his body were staring at Carlos, who was lowering his head and asked in a sharp voice, "Carlos, I ask you as the Lord of Change, what is the biggest variable you see in the future you can look forward to?" Hearing this, all the Lords of Change raised their heads in surprise and looked at the old Carlos next to them in disbelief. Could it be that Carlos's understanding of the future has even surpassed that of the Lord of Change, who owns the Well of Eternity? Carlos seemed to be well prepared for the Lord of Change's question, and confidently answered with his chest puffed out, "Of course, my respected Lord of Change, the biggest variable I can foresee is that hundreds of years after the mortal world, an eternal chosen named Archaon will appear and destroy the entire world." Carlos was full of confidence in his answer, because this was a timeline he had spent countless time and energy to foresee, and there was no way it could go wrong. Chapter 190 to the favor of the Lord of Change. Hearing Carlos's predictions about the future, all the Lords of Change flapped their wings excitedly, unable to suppress their secret joy. Although they didn't know who Archaon was, they had already secretly memorized this name, looking forward to the appearance of the eternal chosen who could destroy the world. However, Carlos's face did not show much joy. He foresaw the dissatisfaction of the Lord of Change, which made him feel particularly worried. This shouldn't be the case. He had indeed spent a lot of energy to figure out the answer to this question. There was no reason for him to be wrong, right? The Lord of Change's constantly changing face showed a playful expression and floated in front of Carlos and asked, "Mahaha, according to you, in the future, someone I recognize will appear to destroy the world?" "The future I saw is indeed like this. A mortal will be recognized by the four gods and become the new eternal chosen." Carlos could feel the Lord of Change mocking him, but he didn't know what he had done wrong. He could only shrink his neck and lower his head slightly. Could it be that the Lord of Change has discovered something through the Well of Eternity that even he, who is looking into the future, cannot perceive? Looking at the somewhat shrunken Carlos, Sinch guessed his thoughts at once. So he waved his tentacles and said sarcastically, "Although you can see the future vision that even this Sinch does not know, you still do not have the power to change the future after all." "Ah, right. It was because you were afraid of death that you kicked me into the Well of Eternity. Now you are still grumbling about me?" Carlos's two heads grumbled at the same time. Although they knew that this was Sinch's ill intentions, they also knew that this was a reminder from the Lord of Change. Although he has the ability to peek into the past and the future, Carlos has lost his vision of what is happening now, and he really cannot change the future too much. But because of this, He can master the abilities of all known magic in the world. Whether it is every spell, language or rune, he can query it through the turbulence of time. But also because of the destruction of his body by the well of eternity, that vicissitudes and aging body cannot engage in long-term close combat at all, and even a low-level demon of Khorne can defeat him. Carlos had a certain understanding of his own erratic strength, so even though he had a vision that the Lord of Change did not have, he did not dare to be too arrogant. After all, that was the Lord of Change, who knew if he would imprison him, because of his disrespect. At this time, all the Lords of Change noticed something was wrong, and they all lowered their heads, and dared not speak, but looked at the Lord of Change, and the trembling Carlos curiously. Fight facing Carlos's obedience, Singe did not intend to embarrass him any further, but continued with the previous topic and asked, then let me guess, what will the future, Eternal Chosen, look like? Will he be an elf wearing armor made of silver? Should be a human wearing black iron armor. Mehahaha, so interesting. Then will his mount be a silver dragon? No, he should be riding a horse of apocalypse named Dorga, and it's mehahaha. It seemed his sharp laughter spread throughout the absolute fortress, and the strong subspace fluctuation spread around, attracting the attention of countless demon princes and the Lord of Change. They hadn't heard such an excited laugh from the Lord of Change for a long time. The last time he laughed like this was when he provoked Scarbrand to chop Khorne, until the surrounding space was about to cause a warp storm. Because of the laughter, Singe stopped laughing and wiped his eyes with countless tentacles. Changes that are enough to distort the future time, worthy of being a variable that can be taken care of by the Well of Eternity alone. It really makes me excited. After a long while, Singe retracted his smile, looked at the Lords of Change who were looking at him expectantly, and directly ordered all the Singe demons. From now on, all demons are not allowed to attack the elves in the mortal Nagaroth without authorization. Understand? Nagaroth? All that Singe demons in the warp received the order of the Lord of Change, but they deeply regretted this order. In the Nagaroth region, apart from those elves, there are only some beastmen and Norscan humans. Is there anything worthy of the great Lord of Change's concern? Looking at the Lords of Change who were all lost in thought, Singe turned back to his boudoir, muttering as he floated, damn, I really want to take him for myself, but I'm also looking forward to what will happen next. It's so tangled. If it weren't for the woman covered in mist who kept messing with him, he would have wanted to put his mark on the elf directly. Halkadora at this time, Rohan didn't know that he had been targeted by the Lord of Change. Now he was busy rebuilding the fortress and incorporating the remnants of Higgs. At this time, the battlefield was full of corpses that were prone to causing plagues and had been burned to ashes by the silver dragons, leaving only the soldiers to collect various spoils. It must be said that the Higgs family is really a big family. Not only did they leave behind a large number of undamaged weapons and equipment, but they also had more than 6,000 Durachi warriors. Although most of these soldiers were private soldiers of the Higgs family, their technical and tactical levels were not weaker than those of the soldiers in Grand Town. In order to leave Marina with enough troops to defend against the next invasion, Rohan selected 2,000 new soldiers who had just joined the Higgs family and left the rest to Marina. After all, compared to those veterans who have been loyal to the Higgs family for many years, Rohan would rather select new soldiers with reliable loyalty. Sir, all the magic items on the corpses have been pulled out. There are at least hundreds of enchanted swords and warhammers that can be used, as well as thousands of usable magic armors, and more than 200 complete cold lizards. A dread knight came to Rohan with a form. His noble origin made him quite proficient in internal affairs, so he was temporarily responsible for handling the siege supplies. Under the city wall, a dozen dread knights who had surrendered to Rohan were unhappy with the silver dragon knights picking their spoils. According to Rohan's request, these silver dragon knights could give priority to choosing their own magic weapons from these spoils, which made the self-esteem of the dread knights very unhappy. Chapter 193, The Spoils of War. Higgs, you ran away really well, and you also left me so many good things. It's really nice. Looking at the magic props that almost filled the entire square, Rohan couldn't help but raise his mouth. This wave of bargain hunting was surreal. thousands of well-preserved magic weapons and armors. These things can't be exchanged for money, but also require a long period of accumulation and family relationships to have such a scale. And now, all these things belong to him. Congratulations, not only did you solve the threat of the Lord of Change, but you also picked up so many magic props for free. This is really a blood profit. Marina looked at these magic props with envy. Although her family was also a big family, it was still not as good as a city person like Higgs. But she didn't feel jealous about this, and she wouldn't have any unreasonable thoughts. When the Lord of Change appeared, Marina was leading the army to chase the fleeing beastmen, so she didn't participate in the frontal battlefield. Moreover, her requirements were not high to begin with. As long as she could save Alcadora, it would be a success. If she could drive Higgs away, it would be a great success. In addition, Rohan left her 4,000 soldiers, as well as the ordinary armor of the Higgs family in the armory, which was enough for her to rebuild her army. Hearing Marina's congratulations, Rohan touched the back of his head a little embarrassedly, and then pointed at the hundreds of cold lizards trembling under the dragon's might in the distance and said, "Except for the cold lizards of the Dread Knights, the others are all yours." Really? These are adult cold lizards that have been domesticated. The market price of each one is worth several thousand gold coins. Don't you think about it? Marina was a little tempted. These cold lizards with a body length of more than 5 meters are indeed the key factor that can determine the outcome of the battlefield. Even the most tight shield wall can hardly withstand their charge. No need. Mekashur and those sorceresses are willing to join me. With the help of the Silver Dragon Knights, I don't need to keep so many cold lizards. Rohan waved his hand and distributed Higgs's property without paying attention to the difficulty on the face of the Dread Knight next to him. He was no longer the Dreadlord who needed to consider heavy cavalry. Now he had Silver Dragon Knights as a mobile force, so there was no need to worry about the cavalry problem. What's more, in World of Behemoths, thousands of Ash Dragoons were being trained and could completely replace the role of heavy cavalry. Compared to the charge launched by 10 cold lizard riders, Rohan was more willing to believe the breath and fear of an Ash Dragoon. Okay, I'll take it. Following Rohan's gaze, Marina also noticed the silver dragons playing outside the city, silently accepting these hundreds of cold lizards. Looking at Marina, who was somewhat silent, Rohan turned his gaze to the Theluch soldiers, who were packing their luggage in the distance, and said, "Well, the Witch King will return to Nagaland in a few days. He will definitely summon us back to inquire about the situation. By then, it will be almost time for me to leave." According to the war report, the battle on the southern front has been going on for several years. It is said that the Witch King has won a decisive victory, but it has also suffered heavy casualties and is unable to continue the attack. This fierce battle has been going on for more than a year, and it is time to end it. Are you leaving? Hearing Rohan say that he was leaving, Marina felt a little reluctant in her heart. During this period of time, she has become a little fascinated by this colorful Lord of Terror. Damn, why does such a young and rich Lord Theluch have a human fiancé? Exclamation mark. After cursing Isabel countless times in her heart, Marina's face under the mask showed a trace of unwillingness, but she still thanked her solemnly. "No matter what, your contribution to Halkadora will never be forgotten by me and my family. From today on, we Halkadora are your most steadfast allies. If you need any help from us, please feel free to ask. You're welcome." Rohan nodded with a smile on his face, saluted to Marina in a friendly manner, and then left the city wall, preparing to take advantage of this time to go to the Pender continent. Looking at the Harry Potter staff on his waist that was worn out because it could not bear the divine power, Rohan chuckled and threw it to the side of the road, then turned around and left Warhammer World. It's over. I can finally take a rest next. The war on the north and south fronts has ended. At least there will be no large-scale war in the next few decades. He can finally develop his own power with peace of mind. However, Rohan did not notice that when he opened the portal to leave the Warhammer world, Marina followed quietly and picked up the magic wand he had discarded on the ground. "It seems that it is time for me to learn magic. I must find a way to become stronger." Looking at the slightly withered brown magic wand, Marina put it in her arms, as if she had found a treasure, and a hint of joy appeared on the corner of her mouth. As the Dreadlord of Alcadora, she was unable to help much in the entire war, and she was able to keep her position with the help of Rohan almost all the time. Her self-esteem would not allow her to be a Dreadlord who had to rely on others. Although she had reached an alliance with Rohan, she only wanted to surpass Rohan in strength now. She is Tarachi. As long as her strength can surpass Rohan, she can completely rely on her own strength to force Rohan to become her man. Although according to the family's arrangement, as the eldest daughter, she had to inherit the position of the Dreadlord, and her younger sister could go to Goron to become a sorceress, but this did not mean that she had no talent for magic. There is a long way to go, and she has plenty of opportunities to slowly become stronger. Pend Continent, Boshi City Hiss. The air without chaos pollution is so sweet and beautiful. After leaving the chaos wasteland full of burnt ash and cold, Rohan felt for the first time that the simple human city was so beautiful. Looking at the restored houses and the gorgeous marble castle on the street, Rohan nodded with satisfaction, and then took out a staff from the system space again, and pointed it at himself. The light blue light instantly covered Rohan's body. Under the horrified gaze of the surrounding citizens, Rohan walked towards the direction of the castle with satisfaction. That's right, as a magic prop that can increase the strength of spells, Rohan's system space stores more than a dozen Harry Potter's wand. Since there are not many people under his command who can use magic, these messy magic props have been collected by Rohan, resulting in a large inventory now. If Marina told him in advance that she wanted to learn magic, he would definitely give her one without mercy. Chapter 194 Barclay Conqueror. It's worthy of being a city that can be described as paradise on earth by the bards of Penda. The scenery is really good. After observing the city of Boshi for the first time as a ruler, Rohan, who had just returned from the Chaos Wasteland, immediately fell in love with this city with a pleasant climate. Compared with the coastal city of Dilingang, Boshi City is backed by a beautiful and clear lake, which can be used as the temple residence of the Lady of the Mist. Moreover, as the former national center of the Bacchus Empire, it also has a complete street and underground pipeline system, which can be used as a new capital. Dario is collecting the remaining human technology in World of Behemoths. It seems that the matter of moving the capital needs to be discussed with Lisa. As long as he can wait until he finishes the war in World of Warhammer, he can free up his hands to concentrate on solving the last city of the Bacchus Empire, Seiyuan City. By that time, Rohan's Silver Dragon Knights will almost be able to come to the continent of Penda. At that time, he will directly ride on the dragon and unify Penda. Humming a pleasant tune, Rohan walked towards the castle, ready to enjoy his rare vacation. However, Rohan, who was admiring the beautiful scenery of Boshi City, did not know that the Seiyuan city he had been thinking about was suffering. Bacchus Empire. Seiyuan City, the large port used for ocean trade in the past, has long disappeared, and the towering walls used to resist the nomadic cavalry of the Deksha Principality have become riddled with holes. Countless corpses were buried in the collapsed ruins, and the remaining fear on their faces foreshadowed their panic and unwillingness before death. The air was filled with a strong smell of gunpowder, and the whole city was so dilapidated that there were almost no living things except for the soldiers who huddled behind the city walls. On the broken city walls, the Empire's crossbowmen numbly searched for the crossbow arrows and crossbow machines that they had abandoned from the ruins. A month ago, Emperor Marius, who was pessimistically called the last emperor by the people of the Empire, awarded the secret weapons that were once treasured to the remaining Imperial legions. 6,000 muzzle-loading muskets from the Barclay Empire, which were powerful enough to easily penetrate the refined iron armor of the evil elves within a distance of 100 meters. In addition, there were 200 powerful artillery pieces with a range and power far exceeding that of the trebuchets. I believe that in the next war, they will be able to cause great damage to those hateful giants. It is said that in order to reverse the decline of being suppressed by the elves, Emperor Marius planned to spend a lot of money to buy more advanced muskets and artillery from the overseas Barclay Empire. Don't confuse Barclay with Barclay. At that time, the people of Barclay had a glimmer of hope for the revival of the Empire, thinking that as long as they could rely on these advanced weapons, they could defeat the elves and regain their lost territory. However, reality gave them a slap in the face. Boom boom boom. A series of thunderous roars came from afar. The soldiers who were originally looking for crossbow arrows in the ruins subconsciously lay on the ground and shouted desperately, "Artillery fire! Pay attention to hiding!" From the skillful and heartbreaking movements, it is not difficult to see that these poor soldiers have suffered countless artillery bombardments. Countless solid shells fell from the sky, smashing the walls that were once unbreakable when facing the Shah cavalry into pieces, and the collapsed buildings also buried the people who took refuge. The fierce bombardment lasted for 10 minutes. The Imperial soldiers hiding behind the ruins had already been shocked and lay on the ground with stars in their eyes. Only the strong and sturdy Imperial knights reacted first, rushing to the ruins with javelins in hand and shouting to the legionnaires who were still lying on the ground, "Don't lie on the ground and wait to die. The bombardment is over and the enemy will soon launch a charge. Get ready for battle." The awakened soldiers hurriedly held their spears and shields tightly, trying to climb up the ruins and gain a foothold on the loose ruins. On the broken rocks of the city wall, the Imperial crossbowmen began to count the few remaining crossbow arrows in their hands, and at the same time desperately poked their heads out and looked at the sea in the distance. Dozens of steel warships with billowing black smoke were floating on the water, and dense gun muzzles stretched out from the hulls, all of which declared their terrifying vitality. And below those ironclad warships, hundreds of small kayaks were rushing towards the coast like ants. Obviously, these invaders were about to land. In the trench outside the city, an Imperial general was holding a javelin and looking at the black armored soldiers who were about to land. He couldn't help but roared in a low voice, "These undeclared bastards. The brave Legion soldiers of the Empire will definitely make the evil Barclay people pay the price." That's right, these black armored soldiers who are invading the Bacchus Empire are the expeditionary forces from the distant Barclay continent. For hundreds of years, scholars on the Pend continent have been full of curiosity and doubts about the vast ocean. What is on the other side of the sea? If he can go back alive, the Imperial general will definitely tell the scholar firmly, on the other side of the sea, there is the enemy. On the kayak, the soldiers of the Barclay Empire are checking the muskets in their hands, patiently waiting for the orders of the officers next to them. For this expedition against the Pend continent, most of the expeditionary soldiers have a positive attitude. After all, according to intelligence, the current Bacchus Empire is already in decline and has almost been completely defeated by the evil elves from the east. It is the best time for Barclay to intervene in Pend. They have been waiting for a long time. The former great enemy, the Cubax Empire of the Amara continent, has been destroyed under the siege of the Snake Cult. The Maritime Empire is also crumbling under the impact of the Jatta people. Now, as the most civilized empire in the world, the Barclay Empire has the obligation to rule the people of Pend who are suffering from the torture of cults and wars, and incorporate them into the empire's territory. The Barclay people want to prove to the world that only atheism and technological revolution can bring a new future to this world. Thinking of this, every Barclay soldier showed a confident smile on his face and looked firmly at the ruined Sion city. There is no doubt that under the devastation of artillery fire, these poor people have lost their families, houses, and food, but they are undoubtedly lucky. Because just a few days ago, they were still living under the rule of the evil dictator, Emperor Marius, and lived a miserable life. And now, the great Barclay Empire will bring them freedom. Huh, you said those evil elves from the east, and their false gods? What a joke. The Barclay Empire will use artillery and steel to teach those backward and barbaric elves what the power of technology is. Chapter 195 Dragon Egg. A few days later, the news that the Barclay Expeditionary Force had captured Sion City and executed the Emperor of the Bacchus Empire, Emperor Marius, along with his nobles, spread throughout Pend. All the native countries of Pend were shocked by the atrocities of the Barclay people. These guys actually dared to kill nobles. According to the local noble etiquette of Pend, all nobles should not kill each other, but should exchange their freedom for ransom. It is not that there have been cases of nobles killing each other, but the situation of the Barclay Empire directly killing the emperor has never happened. For a time, the entire Pend continent was full of calls for the expedition against the Barclay Expeditionary Force, and the nobles were worried that they would end up in the same fate. Faced with the common hatred of the entire Pend continent, the Barclay Expeditionary Force fell into a mysterious silence, as if preparing for a long-term colonization of Pend. Seeing that the Barclay Empire seemed to be very sensible and did not continue to expand, the Pend nobles put down their condemnation of the Barclay people and continued to indulge in war games with each other. However, they did not know that the Barclay expeditionary force came this time to completely conquer and colonize the entire Penda continent. Boshi City. Are these humans from the Barclay Empire so powerful? I have been away for less than 2 months and they have already occupied 3 cities? Looking at a series of battle reports about the Barclay expeditionary force in his hand, Rohan, who was lying on a sun lounger, raised his eyebrows in surprise. He really did not expect that humans would actually stand up. Not only did they forcibly capture Sion City in a short period of time, they were even able to occupy 2 large cities along the coast of the Deksha Principality with the firepower advantage of more than 40 ironclad ships. It can be said that they have made outstanding military achievements. Hearing Rohan's exclamation, Isabel, who was wearing a swimsuit, put down the half-peeled apple, took off her sunglasses helplessly and reminded Rohan, in order to obtain the weapons and equipment of the Barclay people, Anj has taken your personal guards to sneak into the Barclay people's sphere of influence. I believe they will be back soon. I see. I was wondering why I didn't see them. It seems that they went out to play without me. Hearing this, Rohan curled his lips a little unhappy. He also wanted to go out for a walk with them. Since Isabel had taken care of most of the complicated government affairs, Rohan only needed to deal with some major aspects. However, after 2 days of crazy fun, the boring medieval life made him feel a little bored, so he could only come to the inner sea beach next to the city of Boshi to bask in the sun every day. He also wanted to unify the entire Pand continent as soon as possible so that he could get the goddess's cry as soon as possible and stack his melee defense to 100. However, considering the current lack of intelligence on the Barclay people and the fact that there was an armored fleet that might threaten the Imperial port at any time, he had to give up the plan of forcing a war. After taking the apple from Isabel, Rohan collapsed on the sun lounger, chewing the apple while complaining, well, let's keep developing for the time being. After I bring back my Silver Dragon Knights and the Black Ark, we will solve the problem of the Barclay people. It's so boring hearing Rohan sigh. Isabel couldn't help rolling her eyes, and then suddenly seemed to remember something, and asked Rohan curiously, by the way, didn't you say a long time ago that you had a dragon egg? Haven't you thought about how to hatch it? Are you talking about this storm dragon egg? If Isabel hadn't mentioned it, Rohan would have forgotten the dragon egg that he had locked in the box, so he took out a box from the system space and opened it. Isabel came forward curiously and saw that the box was full of Rohan's blood, and in the center of the box, there was a crystal clear purple dragon egg. Looking at the dragon egg that was slowly absorbing blood, Rohan carefully took it out of the box and complained in a depressed tone, it's been almost 2 or 3 years, but it still doesn't move. It must have drunk almost a ton of blood, right? You didn't really shed a ton of blood to feed it, didn't you try some normal methods, such as finding a female dragon to hatch it? I tried it, and I built a warm nest for Luobo for this purpose, but there was no movement after almost a month of hatching, and Luobo was almost depressed. Rohan felt a little wronged about this matter, and even felt a little unfair for Luobo. Because the reproduction capacity of the ash dragon is very strong, it takes an average of several weeks to hatch a nest of dragon eggs, so Luobo sat on the dragon egg with full confidence at that time. But after a full month of no movement, Luobo began to think that there was something wrong with his body and he couldn't hatch this storm dragon egg, and he was depressed for several days. If Rohan hadn't promised her with the dragon's heart that he would find a male dragon to conceive in the future, I'm afraid that Luobo would be devastated. Looking at the purple dragon egg that had no movement after leaving the blood, Isabel couldn't help but take out her staff and suggested with some curiosity, there is a trick called Spring in the life spell, which can speed up the growth of all things. Do you want me to try it? There shouldn't be any harm in vitality energy, otherwise you can try injecting some vitality first. Rohan was also a little moved by Isabel's suggestion. After all, his current demand for flying beasts is not as great as before, so he doesn't mind choosing other ways to hatch. As long as he doesn't use black magic to ripen like the sorceress of Gorand, he doesn't mind using some means to speed up the growth. Anyway, with the guarantee of the Lady of the Mist, even if the hatched dragon is malnourished, it can still be saved by the blessing of the Lady of the Mist. This is the benefit of having a big boss as a background hearing that Rohan had agreed to her suggestion. Isabel had no worries in her heart. A faint green light lit up directly on the staff and floated towards the dragon egg in her hand. The green light instantly covered the entire dragon egg. Isabel's eyes were full of concentration, controlling the life energy in her body to slowly inject it into the dragon egg. Although the wind of life can be said to be the most docile of all magic winds, the consequences of mismanipulation are not inferior to other spells. Rohan also nervously drew out his staff, his eyes fixed on the dragon egg. As long as he found that the situation was not right, he would decisively knock the dragon egg away to prevent Isabel from being hurt. There will be a future for dragon eggs, but it is rare to have a Fiancé who can cast life spells. Chapter 196 Triumphal Ceremony. Unfortunately, the dragon egg did not change as they expected. After a slight shake, nothing came out of it. Let me try again. Isabel continued to inject life force into the dragon egg unwillingly, but the dragon egg did not respond to her. In addition to making the purple pattern on the dragon egg more vivid, these life forces had almost no useful effect on catalyzing the dragon egg. Seeing that Isabel seemed to still have the intention to try, Rohan could only sigh secretly, put the dragon egg back into the box and advised, "Forget it, maybe this dragon egg is simply a dead egg. I'll take it to the Lady of the Mist when I have a chance in the future. If it doesn't work, just roast it and eat it." Slowly putting down the staff in her hand, Isabel looked at the box that Rohan had put back into the system space with regret, blinked her lips and sighed. Oh, what a pity, such a precious dragon egg. In fact, I'm really curious about what a dragon egg tastes like. Now that you mention it, I'm a little curious too. Maybe it's like a large bad egg. After lying back on the sun lounger, Rohan put on his sunglasses again, feeling the kind sunshine shining on himself, and said to Isabel beside him, "I will be back soon. During the time I am away, you must give priority to the spread of the Lady of the Mist's faith and the development of the city, and then continue to wage war. After I come back, another war is about to be launched. These people of Pender are really plagued by disasters." Hearing that Rohan was going to continue the war, Isabel's face showed a heavy expression and a trace of barely perceptible disgust. This disgust was not for Rohan who started the war, but for the Chaos Gods who forced Rohan to start the war. She had learned about the existence of the 4 Chaos Gods from Lady Mist and Rohan. For these demons that subverted the 3 views of ordinary people, Isabel was eager to go on the field and kill a few demons herself. The most important thing was that Rohan had revealed to her that Lady Mist and his world were destined to be destroyed in the future, so Isabel could understand Rohan's urgent need for external expansion. Seeing the silence on Isabel's face, Rohan could only stand up and hold her in his arms. He used magic to display a blueprint in the air and introduced it with hopeful words. "You know what? My wish is not that big. As long as I can ensure that those who live under the glory of the Lady of the Mist are free from the threat of chaos, I will be satisfied." The blueprint showed the various crimes committed by chaos demons in the mortal world. The believers of Khorne piled up the heads of innocent people like mountains, and the sea of blood in the city gathered into rivers, but they were beheaded by their crazy companions around them. The believers of Tzeentch relied on the wisdom they were given to constantly tease those kind and simple innocent people, but they did not know that they were just one of the pawns of the Lord of Change. The believers of Nurgle continued to spread the plague to the people around them, torturing those once happy families with illness, and finally turning these innocent people into swollen and corrupt monsters. The believers of Slaanesh were performing various pleasure rituals that far exceeded the senses of ordinary people. Although they got temporary pleasure, they also became slaves of Slaanesh forever. Countless horrific scenes were shown on the blueprint, and Isabel couldn't help but cover her mouth. This was the first time she witnessed a disaster caused by a chaos demon. Although she had heard Rohan mention the horror of the chaos demon countless times before, this was the first time she saw such a horrific scene. For a princess who had lived in an ordinary medieval country since childhood, the impact of the chaos demon on her far exceeded the disgust of Rohan's cruel compatriots. With such an evil and terrible existence, I'm afraid it's impossible to be cruel, right, Lisa? In order for innocent people to sleep peacefully with their parents and family. We have an obligation to stop all this. Okay, I promise you, let me handle the government affairs during this period. Looking at the light screen slowly disappearing in the air, Isabel hesitated for a moment, and finally agreed to Rohan's request. A few days later, Naga and the wide streets, that were once covered with blood and minced meat had long been cleaned up, and the roadside was full of neatly lined up Naga and black guards, maintaining the only order in the city. If it weren't for the strong smell of blood in the air and the dozens of meters high altar of Cain in the center of the city, no one would believe that this was the capital of the Dark Elves. On the altar, the half-dressed witch priests were excitedly pushing desperate elf slaves onto the altar, with grim smiles on their pretty faces. You know, in normal times, the expensive elf slaves would not be so easily taken out for them to slaughter, and could only become the slaves of the nobles. But just yesterday, hundreds of Asur slaves were sent by the nobles to sacrifice Cain for free, and they could kill them at will. Because today is a day when the Witch King returns triumphantly. All the nobles changed into their most gorgeous clothes, and the female elves also changed into clothes that best show off their figures, looking forward to the carnival after the welcome ceremony. In the ranks of the nobles, Higgs was silently following his father to the front of the team, enduring the teasing eyes of other nobles around him. Obviously, his behavior of abandoning the army and fleeing the battlefield without authorization has been known to other nobles. Listen, the Witch King won this time, so he shouldn't chop off your head. So when the Witch King asks you to meet him, you can ask for 100,000 gold coins to plead for yourself. Higgs's father looked at his silent son behind him, with no expression on his face, as if the other party was not his child at all. There was no way. After all, this turtle son had promised solemnly to take down Halkadora, and as a patriarch, he and the elders would allow him to take all the private soldiers out. But now, not only did he fail to take down Halkadora, he even fled the battlefield alone in humiliation, leaving the remaining private soldiers to that little bitch Marina. The most important thing is that according to the intelligence from the front line, Higgs, this idiot, actually provoked a Fear Lord who could defeat the Lord of Change head on. This behavior is more than stupid, it is simply stupid. Looking at Higgs, who always kept his head down and dared not speak, the patriarch couldn't help but sigh. After all, he was his only male eldest son, so he had to protect him as much as possible. When the Dreadlord named Rohan comes to Nagarand, I will go to apologize to him and try my best to marry your sister to him. What? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197 Eternal Phoenix King. Father, you can't do this. Higgs ignored the discontented looks of the nobles around him, suppressed his anger, and complained loudly to his father. However, this almost absurd behavior not only failed to change his father's mind, but the patriarch looked at his son who was more likely to cause trouble than to do good things, and scolded him harshly. I'm not discussing with you. You should think about how to plead with the Lord Witch King. If the Lord Witch King does not agree to your request, then I will not help you anymore. Don't think I don't know your little thoughts, because your stupidity has caused the family to be surrounded by enemies. If you dare to mess with me again, I will deprive you of your inheritance rights. Hearing this, Higgs's originally handsome face immediately twisted with anger, and his heart was filled with rage. His sister Undine was just a virgin in her 20s, even by the standards of the elves. She was a minor. The most important thing is that Higgs likes Undine. As the most beautiful girl in Nagarand, and even in the entire Iron Mountains, Undine's beauty has long attracted a large number of unmarried young nobles. Moreover, the Higgs family was originally the largest military family in Nagarand, in charge of several towns and a medium-sized black ark, which can be said to be the best alliance partner. More importantly, in order to be able to sell her little daughter for a good price, Undine was not like her sisters who could find lovers everywhere, but was locked up in a deep palace far away from people. This also led to Higgs, the eldest son of the family, only seeing Undine at a grand banquet of the Witch King. but it was that stunning glimpse that year that Higgs was attracted by Undyne's stunning face and couldn't extricate himself. When he thought that his sister, who he had been thinking about day and night, was going to become Rohan's woman, Higgs felt that his back teeth were about to be broken. However, now was not the time for him to lose his temper, because at the moment, when they were talking, the army of the Lord Witch King had returned. Tap, 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 the crisp and loud footsteps came from far away, and as the heavy rune gate was slowly opened, all the citizens of Durachi showed happy smiles on their faces. They didn't know what the battle on the front line was like, they only knew that in the propaganda of those priests, the great Phoenix King successfully defeated those usurpers, and won an unprecedented victory. Of course, most people were not fools. They had already guessed that the result of this war was a tragic victory, but they didn't care. After all, the Asur slaves who were being driven into the city by the slave owners could not lie. As long as they could see these former compatriots suffer, they felt it was worth it, no matter how many people died. In the sky, hundreds of manticores were circling around the city, and the sorceresses riding on the lions' backs used magic from time to time to release purple fireworks, bringing more joy to this triumph. Many citizens tried to identify their families from the army and share the joy of victory with them. However, the huge casualties of hundreds of thousands on the front line had already determined that countless families would lose one of their members. Some citizens who valued their families could not help but fall into grief, but more citizens had already begun to participate in the carnival and made moves on those Asur slaves. The joy of the carnival was enough to blow away the pain in the heart, not to mention the rich spoils of war. However, not everyone paid attention to these slaves. Most of the citizens and nobles were anxiously looking up, looking forward to the black shadow in the sky. A dragon roar that resounded throughout the Nagaran Bay came from afar. Under the attention of all citizens, several black dragons with a body length of nearly 300 meters flew from afar. It was the eternal Phoenix King, the chosen of Cain, the Witch King of Nagarand, the son of Venarian, and the true master of Ulthuan, Malekith. It's the Witch King. The Witch King and his powerful black dragon, Seraphim, are back. Not only that, next to them is Beast Lord, Rakus, and Supreme Sorcerer, Morathi. All the powerful lords are back. Phoenix King, Phoenix King, Phoenix King. The citizens roared excitedly. For those elves who were willing to follow all the way from Nagarive to Nagarath, the Witch King Malekith had already become their faith. Hearing the cheers of the people below, Morathi rode a black Pegasus quietly to the side of Seraphim and smiled and advised Malekith, "My son, have you seen the people's support for you? As long as you are willing to counterattack Ulthuan, the whole world will cheer your name like it does now. No, we are short of troops now, and the soldiers are already exhausted. I will not rashly start a large-scale war under this situation." Malekith did not feel any joy at his mother's provocation, and his face under the mask was full of solemnity. This battle caused him heavy losses. Even the elite black guards of Nagarand were severely injured, not to mention the death of 2 black dragons and a large number of infantry. And the reason why this sudden war broke out was entirely because of his stupid mother. Therefore, Malekith decisively did not give his mother any good eyes, but turned his eyes to the Bakeson and soldiers on the ground, raised his right hand and gestured slightly. Seeing that his beloved son ignored his plan, Morathi, who was bored, was ready to land, but was stopped by Rakus on the side. "Beautiful Supreme Sorceress, I have encountered a trouble recently, and I hope to get your help." "Oh, why should I help you?" Hearing Lakus's request, Morathi put down the reins in her hand and looked at the Beast Lord with interest. She could feel the other party's lustful eyes secretly looking at her beautiful body that was almost naked, but it did not embarrass her. Desire means there are flaws. Looking at the graceful phoenix net mother in front of him, Lakus barely suppressed the transgression in his heart and explained righteously, "As long as it is something I can do, whether it is money or soul, I can offer it with both hands. Just asking the great supreme sorceress to fulfill my wish. HMPH interesting. Come to my room tonight, maybe we can have a good discussion." After that, Morathi rode Pegasus directly towards the castle, leaving only a fragrance in the air that was enough to awaken the desire of any creature. Lakus rode on the dragon's back in a daze, and only reacted after the smell in the air dissipated, and the broken corners of his mouth could not stop rising. "It's done." Exclamation mark. Chapter 198 Accusations. Watching the black dragon in the sky slowly descending into the black castle, the nobles quietly dispersed, ready to bring gifts from their respective families, to visit and celebrate with the Witch King. According to convention, the treasury would be empty for a period of time after each war, and during this period it was time for the major families to show their courtesy. As long as they could pay tribute to the treasury with valuable gold, silver and jewelry, and wait until the finances returned to normal in a few years, the Witch King would reward the families with status and power. This was also an unwritten rule of Nagarand. Black Castle, Your Majesty, the Great Phoenix King. These are 500 domesticated cold lizards presented by our family, hoping to help your army recover its combat effectiveness as soon as possible. In the dark palace hall, Malekith leaned back on the cold iron throne, looking at the middle-aged elf below, and Higgs who bowed beside him with interest. As if he had sensed the Witch King's gaze, Higgs mustered up the courage to look at the throne, but then he lowered his head in fear at the pair of green eyes that seemed to be able to devour souls. The nobles around him also had a playful look on their faces, looking forward to what kind of good show they would see next. After an unknown amount of time, Malekith turned his gaze to the several black guards next to him and asked Tyrell, who was in the lead, "Where is the Rohan man? Why didn't I see him?" "Witch King, Rohan wrote to me a few days ago. Because a dreadlord named Higgs abandoned his army and fled the battlefield without authorization, he needs to reorganize the local soldiers, so he may be late." Tyrell, who received Rohan's letter in advance, directly handed the envelope to the Witch King, and then emphasized Higgs' name, with a tone full of murderous intent and disdain. Even the black guards who were originally standing guard near the hall heard the name Higgs, and their eyes burst into uncontrollable murderous intent, holding their shields and halberds tightly. Almost all the current black guards of the castle were comrades brought up by Rohan in the past, so they all wished they could crush Higgs to ashes with their own hands. They would never forget those teammates who died tragically at the hands of Higgs, and their painful wails before they died. The cold murderous aura instantly filled the entire hall, and the oppressive atmosphere made these pampered nobles a little breathless, but they did not dare to make any sound. The entire hall fell into a dead silence, with only the dull breathing sound from the horrible mask of the Witch King from time to time echoing in the empty and dark palace. After an unknown amount of time, Malekith slowly stood up from the throne and came to Higgs, who was half kneeling on the ground, and asked, "I remember you. You once participated in the Black Tower training of the Black Guard of Nagarand, and you are also an excellent warrior. Why did you flee the battlefield without permission?" The piercing voice like the cold wind made Higgs on the ground tremble with fear. He suppressed the fear in his heart and shivered. "I'm sorry, Lord Witch King." At that time, a powerful Lord of Change appeared on the battlefield. His magic power was so strong that my female sorcerers had no way to counter it. "So you were afraid and abandoned your army, leaving the local dreadlords to fight alone." Malekith gently placed his palm on Higgs' shoulder, and the sharp gauntlet kept approaching Higgs' soft neck, which made him shudder. He knew that, if he made a mistake in what he said next, his neck would most likely be torn apart. At this critical moment, he suddenly thought of the information that Mekisha secretly sent him, which was the battle report about Rohan's battle with the Lord of Change. That bastard named Rohan can use magic. Thinking of this, Higgs felt like he had grabbed a life-saving straw. He ignored the sharp hooks that pierced his hands and hugged the calf of the Lord Witch King and cried, "Lord Witch King, the battlefield was too dangerous at that time. The dreadlord named Rohan secretly learned magic and even used magic to attack my troops. Moreover, for his own selfish reasons, he also forced me to hand over the army to him for command. I just fled the battlefield because I was worried that I would be assassinated by Rohan with magic." "Higgs, do you know what you are saying?" Hearing that his son actually made such a serious accusation, Higgs' father, who was kneeling beside him, hurriedly grabbed his arm and tried to stop him from continuing. "You know, according to the few laws of Nagaroth, accusing a dreadlord of violating the law would be an extremely serious insult, which could basically be said to be a fight to the death. After all, the laws of Nagaroth all start with the death penalty, and the highest punishment is soul imprisonment. Such an accusation will greatly affect the relationship between the two sides. Although he, as the patriarch, has never met Rohan himself, the battle report from the front has confirmed that the other party has the strength to defeat a chaos demon head on. Now most of the family's private soldiers have been consumed, and countless nobles are eyeing their family, hoping to annex them at any time. In this case, Higgs actually added new enemies to the family, which is simply a suicidal act. Rohan, is he the handsome boy who believes in the Lady of the Mist? Standing in the corner of the palace, Morathi heard Rohan's name. A weird smile appeared at the corner of her mouth, and she turned her eyes to her baby son. She expected Malekith to sentence Rohan to have violated the law, so that she could legitimately take the handsome boy she missed for herself. However, the Lord Witch King did not show any anger. He just looked at his bloody leg armor with some disdain, and returned to the throne and said, "Anyway, Rohan will be back soon. When he comes back, you can confront him face to face." Higgs, with blood on his hands, knelt on the ground blankly. He had realized his mistake, and could only hold on to the last glimmer of hope, and prayed to the Lord Witch King. "Lord Witch King, I'm willing to hand over 100,000 gold coins to the treasury, to redeem the sins I committed on the battlefield. Of course I can forgive your mistakes, Lord Higgs, but you also need to be responsible for your accusation of another Lord of Fear." Malekith did not mind this behavior of someone giving him money without paying a penny. Anyway, he would get the money regardless of winning or losing. Compared with his insignificant money, he was more interested in Higgs' accusation that Rohan learned magic. Looking at the nobles still gathered in the hall, Malekith waved his hand in boredom, and said to those nobles who still wanted to continue to flatter him, "Go down. All the nobles will gather at the duel arena at noon tomorrow. I will personally judge the conflict between these two nobles." Chapter 199 Malekith's Trust. Watching the nobles slowly leaving the palace hall, Malekith slowly closed his eyes and collapsed on the throne. He had to deal with all these troubles just after returning from the front line, which really made him irritable. Suddenly, a charming and seductive fragrance slowly came into Malekith's nose. He did not open his eyes, but asked with some annoyance, "You must be very tired after traveling for several days. It's time to go down and rest. Don't be so heartless, my dear son. I have some small questions to ask you." Morathi sat directly on the table in front of the Witch King, gently stroking the cold midnight armor on his body, and curiously asked in a charming voice, "Why don't you send Cain's assassin to kill the Dreadlord who dared to learn magic? Have you forgotten the prophecy?" Her sexual interest in Rohan has not diminished at all. If Malekith forgets the prophecy due to negligence, then Morathi doesn't mind helping him solve a potential disaster personally. Of course, before getting rid of this scourge, she had to enjoy Rohan's handsome body, and when she got tired of playing with him, she would sacrifice his body to Slanesh. Unfortunately, Malekith did not agree to her request. He just slightly opened his dark green eyes, took out an envelope from the drawer of the desk, and threw it to Morris. Morris took the envelope curiously, only to see that this dusty envelope had been opened long ago, and the parchment inside was a little yellow. After spreading out the parchment and reading it carefully, Morris couldn't help but widen her beautiful eyes and ask Malekith in surprise, "A year ago, the little guy named Rohan told you everything about practicing magic?" "Yeah." "Such an excessive request. You agreed?" "I didn't write him a reply." "Isn't that tacit consent?" Exclamation mark. Hearing that her son had acquiesced to a male Daruch learning magic, Morathi jumped down from the table in a hurry and rebuked anxiously, "Have you forgotten the prophecy? You must not be careless about male elves learning magic like this. You should kill him quickly." "Don't worry, I don't doubt his loyalty. Besides, the reason why he can cast magic is all due to the magic power given to him by the Lady of the Mist. He is not a wizard." Malekith was not worried that Rohan would betray him, not to mention the iron oath they made 100 years ago. It was because both sides had no reason to stab each other in the back. As he often traveled to other worlds, Rohan needed dark elves as a source of troops and a place to stay, and Malekith also needed the wealth and other world magic that Rohan brought back. As early as a year ago, Malekith had received the other world black magic, Hellfire, and Shadow Dancer. Malekith was very satisfied with this black magic that did not consume the wind of magic, but only consumed some physical strength to cast. He still remembers the painful howling of the once annoying tree people under the evil black flames when they tried to attack him, and the shock and fear on the face of Shadow King Eris when he was pierced in the abdomen by his own shadow dancer when he tried to attack him from behind. After the battle, Malekith drank several bottles of wine for the first time in a long time and had a good dream. The shadow dancer, who has a little self-awareness, is simply the best personal bodyguard, so that he does not have to worry about being assassinated by the Shadow King all the time. Under such a premise, how could he kill his great contributor, Rohan? He still expects Rohan to continue to bring him more surprises. But Morathi doesn't think so. In her eyes, any male elf who knows how to cast magic is an enemy that may threaten Malekith. Seeing that her son seemed unwilling to kill the dreadlord named Rohan, Morathi gritted her teeth and insisted, "Even so, you should rather kill the innocent than let him go. I suggest that he be sentenced to death in tomorrow's trial. If he dares to resist, I will personally kill him." As soon as the voice fell, the magical wind around Malekith gathered at a speed visible to the naked eye, and purple light that was strong enough to tear the skin slowly appeared in the air. The wind of death surrounded Malekith and Morathi like a sharp blade, and it flew through Morathi's skin accurately every time. "I'm the Witch King of Nagarand, the future Phoenix King of Ulthuan." Malekith's green eyes stared at Morathi's beautiful eyes, and a hoarse voice full of deterrence came from under the mask, saying in an almost angry tone, "As the future Phoenix King, if I kill my subordinates, because I'm jealous of their strength, what is the difference between me and the fake king who accomplished nothing in the past, Belshana?" He is the Witch King Malekith. He has enough patience and confidence to handle the relationship with Rohan well, and does not need his mother who always does bad things to interfere. Belshana chose to use despicable means to seize his alliance with the dwarves because of Malekith's great achievements. As a wise leader, Malekith will not let Rohan experience what he experienced in the past, and let this happen to him again. Humph, one day you will regret your decision today. Seeing that Malekith was unwilling to listen to her advice, Morathi snorted coldly, and after using magic to blow away the wind of death around him, she turned and left the palace hall. Who is she? She is the wife of the first Phoenix King, and the mother of the current legal Phoenix King. Why would she need permission to do anything? Watching his mother slowly leave the palace hall, Malekith slowly sat back on the throne, closed his eyes, and fell into deep thought. Around the palace, all the black guards, including the current captain of the guard, Irol, swallowed nervously, waiting for the next order from the Witch King. After an unknown amount of time, Malekith opened his eyes again, and ordered the empty stone pillar next to Irol, "Go keep an eye on my dear mother, and at the same time, arrange your people in the duel arena. I don't want her to do anything stupid." "Yes, Lord Witch King, do we need to arrange people around Rohan?" A black shadow slowly walked out of the shadow of the stone pillar, and Kull, the chief mentor of the Kane assassins, came to the throne and half knelt on the ground to ask. Malekith hesitated again, and this time he took much longer to think. It was not until Kull felt his legs were aching that he whispered, "No need." At the same time, withdraw all the assassins you have arranged in Grand Town. There is no need to continue the surveillance. "Yes, sir." Chapter 200. The trial begins. Nagarand, arena time flies, and it is the next day in a blink of an eye. Almost all the nobles and citizens in the city have learned about the trial personally handled by the Witch King, so they all entered the arena to watch. For the locals of Nagarand, the conflicts and duels between the lords and nobles have long been an indispensable seasoning in their daily lives. The viewing platform of the arena was crowded, and some official bets could be seen from time to time. The content of the bet was about the two dreadlords, Rohan and Higgs, who could leave the arena alive. The sexy female dealers were constantly taking gold coins from the nobles and citizens and putting them into their pockets. It is not difficult to see from the amount of money in the pockets that the nobles and citizens obviously have more confidence that Higgs can survive. After all, the Higgs family is also a noble of the Three Flags of the Black Dragon, who once followed the Witch King to pass the customs, and the family's heritage is far from that of a new noble. Of course, not everyone is not optimistic about Rohan. "I bet 1000 gold, Rohan wins." "Take me, I'll bet 500. "Are you guys so nice?" "Then I'll bet 2000 too." A bunch of dull voices came from the side of the viewing platform. The nearby citizens were about to turn around and mock these blind gamblers, but then they turned their heads away in fear. The reason was simple. The ones who placed the bets were a group of Naga and blackguards. Even the nobles of Nagaran dared not easily provoke these bloodthirsty warriors who were over 2 meters tall and extremely skilled in fighting skills, let alone just civilians. The captain of the guard, Irol, directly put all his salary this year on Rohan, and then patted the sexy dealer's hips and asked curiously, "Isn't it said that this is a noble trial? How come the Witch King has arrived, but Rohan hasn't arrived yet? My lord, this trial will be held at noon, as long as Lord Rohan can arrive at the scene before noon." The coquettishly dressed dealer twisted her snake-like body against Irol and smiled as she put the gold coin sent by the surrounding blackguards into the accompanying box. She was just a small dealer and didn't know much information, so Irol sat on the chair with the dealer in her arms, patiently waiting for Rohan to appear. Not long after, the steel gate of the arena was slowly opened, and Higgs, who was wearing magic armor and various protective gear, slowly entered the arena. He held the sharp sawtooth warhammer in his hand, and the faint light that kept shining on it made people have no doubt that this enchanted weapon could easily break any iron armor, and under his crotch was a giant cold lizard completely covered with heavy armor plates. The huge body of 8 meters long and the sharp front claws made people have no doubt about its ferocity. Obviously, in order to prevent Rohan from challenging him to a duel, Higgs had brought all the best armor and weapons in the family. Roar, accompanied by the giant cold lizard's roar, Higgs arrogantly waved the warhammer in his hand and waved to the audience around him. The citizens on the viewing platform cheered in unison. Such gorgeous and powerful equipment made them particularly fascinated, and they were more confident in their bets. Only those nobles who were on good terms with Rohan looked at this jumping clown with disdain, looking forward to the final death of this clown. 1 hour later, the cold wind of Nagaroth continued to blow. It was already noon, but snowflakes began to fall slowly from the sky. Everyone was patiently waiting for Rohan's arrival. After all, Halkadra's location was relatively far away, and even riding a manticore would take several days to get back. On the highest seat in the arena, Malekith was resting with his eyes closed, while constantly practicing his shadow dancer. He hated snowflakes, so much so that he felt bored when he saw a world covered in snow. Ang, a dragon roar came from the distant horizon, and Malekith slowly opened his eyes, and with some surprise, he turned his eyes to several silver giant shadows in the distance. Lacus, who was sitting next to him with his eyes closed, recalling the marrow-eating physical enjoyment of last night, also jumped up from the stool suddenly, looking excitedly at the silver dragon that was getting closer and closer. It's a new Pokemon. As a 100-meter-long silver flying dragon gradually landed on the wide arena, dust was lifted from the field, and the audience in the front row ate a mouthful of flying sand. Everyone stared blankly at the huge silver dragon and the 2 figures, one black and one white, on its back. They thought about how Rohan would appear, but they never thought that he would ride a dragon so arrogantly. Looking at the golden-eyed silver dragon that blended into the flying snow and the 4 silver dragons flying in the sky, Lacus could no longer suppress his excitement and ran down the viewing platform with his whip. He had learned about Rohan's identity from Morathi last night and was asked to give false testimony at the trial. But now the sudden appearance of these silver dragons immediately made him give up his plan to give false testimony. It is certain that Lacus has never seen this style of 2-legged flying dragon in the past 1,000 years. This must be a new species from another world in the legend. Damn, if he had known that this guy named Rohan could travel through another world, he should have met him earlier. Maybe there would be more creatures from another world waiting for him. Looking at the thousands of spectators surrounding the arena, Lobo first let out a nervous roar, and then slowly lowered his head, revealing the 2 people on the dragon saddle. It was Rohan and Morina who were almost late. After jumping off the dragon's back, Rohan caught the slender Marina beside him, then bowed to the Witch King and said, "Witch King, we have been rushing here day and night since we received your notice. I hope we are not too late." "Well, you are here at the right time, so it is time to start the trial." Looking at Rohan's Ithram silver armor, which was as gorgeous as the Dragon Prince of Ossian, The Witch King raised his non-existent eyebrows under the mask, and then looked at Higgs on the other side and said, "This dreadlord named Higgs has accused you of learning magic without authorization, while knowing the ban, and trying to assassinate him with magic to annex his army. Is this true?" "Absolutely not. My loyalty to the Witch King is known to all, and I will never do anything disobedient or disloyal." Rohan looked at Higgs, who was dressed in military uniform, with contempt for this almost face-breaking statement, and then directly denied these messages. In this case, even if it is true, it must be said to be false. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.